This is the October 20th, 29th, 2024 regular meeting of the Santa Barbara City Council. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Certainly. Councilmember Harmon.
Here.
Councilmember Oscar Gutierrez.
Present.
Councilmember Friedman.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Jordan.
Here.
Councilmember Sneddon is absent. Councilmember Alejandro Gutierrez.
Present.
And Mayor Ross.
Here. Very good. And with that, Madam Administrator, are there any changes to the agenda?
Just one, Mayor. We'd like to remove consent calendar item number 4, which is amendments to the schedule of penalties, fees, and service charges related to sewer service connections. We will be returning with that item to Finance Committee on November 19th and Council on December 3rd.
Thank you. Okay. Eliminate item 4. And with that, we will move to the consent calendar. Madam Clerk, you have some items to read?
Yes, item 2, ordinance for the second amendment to the Hertz Corporation concession agreement at the airport ordinance introduction agreement. Recommendation the council introduce and subsequently adopt by reading of title only an ordinance of the council of the city of Santa Barbara approving and authorizing the airport director to execute the second amendment to the concession agreement with the Hertz Corporation located at 500 James Fowler Road, commencing upon the effective date of the enabling ordinance. Item 3, accept and appropriate the California Office of Historic Preservation Grant Resolution. Recommendation the council B, adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara amending resolution number 24066, adopting the budget for fiscal year 2025 to accept a grant in the amount of $40,000 funded by the California Office of Historic Preservation and increase revenue and expenditure appropriations by $40,000 in the Community Development Miscellaneous Grants Fund. Item 4, item 4 we are not hearing. Item 5, authorization to amend the legal services agreement with Jarvis Fay LLP, resolution agreement. Recommendation of the council B, adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the council of the city of Santa Barbara amending resolution number 24066, adopting the budget for fiscal year 2025 to appropriate $100,000 of general fund reserves into the city attorney's office operating budget in fiscal year 2025.
All right, very good. Are there any items anyone needs to pull? Mr. Friedman.
Mr. Mayor, I will need to recuse myself from item 5, and the reason for that recusal is that I own a small amount of stock in Disney.
Okay, very good, and we'll bring that back up when we do the poll consent items. Are there any speakers online that need to poll or speak to an item?
There are no hands raised, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, very good. With that, I would entertain a motion to approve everything except for item 4, which has been eliminated, and item 5, which has been pulled.
So moved.
So moved by
Second.
Councilman Jordan, second by Councilmember Harmon. May we have a vote, please?
Yes, this is a vote on the consent calendar accepting items 4 and 5. Motion by Mayor Pro Tem Jordan, seconded by Councilmember Harmon. Please go ahead and vote.
Thank you. That passes unanimously with the absence of Kristen Sneddon. We're good? All righty, we'll take a report from the Ordinance Committee, please.
Thank
Mr.
you,
Chair.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, you need to take an action on item number 5. Excuse me.
Do we do that now or when we pull the consent? We
Oh,
have the
I'm
poll
sorry. Sorry.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Got
Mr. Jordan,
ahead
go
of
right ahead.
myself.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Today, Ordinance Committee reviewed changes to the municipal code having to do with our airport police unit, and it's mainly cleanup work related to legislation and keeping them post-compliant. So we'll be seeing that at council shortly. It was unanimously recommended to move it to council.
All right, thank you very much. And with that, we will move to general public comment, and that's for the public to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes at the dais on any subject that is not on today's agenda, but within the purview of this body. And with that, we'll start out with Patricia Keelian. I think I got that right, hopefully.
You're very close. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. My name is Patricia Keelan. I'm the CEO for Communify, formerly the Community Action Commission of Santa Barbara County. Communify was established in 1967 to provide education and supportive services to help our most vulnerable residents achieve economic stability and become self-sufficient. That same year, we established the Los Niños Head Start site located at Plaza de Veracruz on Coda Street. The center provided quality childcare and early education services to approximately 20 children each year at no cost for 56 years. Between 2012 and 2021, we invested approximately $275,000 in maintenance and upgrades to the facility. We're proud to say that we helped to shape the lives of over 1,100 children at the Los Niños site, including our current board member, Josie Torres, who was a Head Start student back in the late 60s. In 2019, Jill Zachary, Director of Parks and Recreation, notified Communify that the City of Santa Barbara was planning to demo the Los Niños Head Start Center, the building, and that we would need to relocate. She shared her plans to open up Plaza de Veracruz from Coda Street to East Haley Street so that residents could access the park more easily. In the summer of 2022, we vacated the building, leaving many families without options for quality, affordable childcare. Now, years later, we have not been able to find another affordable site to reestablish the program. In the meantime, Santa Barbara Trapeze has established itself at the park, and rather than opening up the park on both sides, as Ms. Zachary had told us, permanent fencing has been installed along the East Haley Street. Sadly, the Head Start building and the playground remain vacant and untouched. In May, I learned that the Parks and Rec Department was planning to utilize the building for summer programming. So I reached out to Ms. Zachary to request that Communify be able to provide childcare services there again. She replied that that they have short-term agreements in place for use of the building, and they continue plans for improving the park. Meanwhile, families in need of affordable childcare must look for other options. Affordable childcare has been identified as the county's one of the greatest priorities here in Santa Barbara County. According to a recent needs assessment conducted by the Santa Barbara Foundation, families from all income levels struggle to find affordable, high-quality childcare, resulting in long waiting lists due to a shortage of 9,000 childcare spots countywide. The cost of childcare can consume up to 40% of a family's household income. Our Head Start programs provide quality early education services, healthy meals and snacks, vision, hearing, and hearing screenings at no cost to families. Working families here in the city of Santa Barbara need this program. Given this need, we
Ms. Keeling, are
respectfully
you close
request...
to be over time right now?
Okay, we respectfully request that after the police department is built, that we be allowed to reestablish a Head Start program at that site. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Cruzita Herrera Cruz is the next speaker.
Good afternoon, Mayor Rouse, council members. My name is Cruzito Herrera Cruz. I am a candidate for District 1. I want to say something that's fundamental that's missing in this election is a video candidate statement produced through the city of Santa Barbara and that is funded through Santa Barbara that provides a very neutral, nonpartisan presentation of all the candidates that are running. In this election, it is missing. Do you know about it? Does our District 1 incumbent, Alejandro, know about the video statements that are missing within this elections? Why I bring this up is because within the Newshawk Independent has been very skewed in its narrative of the candidates. Thus, they're creating an influence of how the election outcomes can be produced in our community. That's undemocratic. The video produced through the city provided a very neutral space for all candidates to produce a production that is neutral and talks about informing constituents, the voters of Santa Barbara, who they are. By that missing, we are fundamentally silencing all voters' choices, because the two media companies that we have within our city are not necessarily fair. Again, my candidacy through my ballot statement is to focus on the economic and social revitalization of the Milpas downtown corridor. My election has been about a three-point plan from the last 6 elections that I have consecutively participated in. It's about improving the educational youth services for seniors, adult, and youth. Second is to improve the public infrastructure and the housing affordability. There's a housing crisis in our community. Like there's a housing crisis, there's also a housing crisis for childcare. So those go hand in hand. And we have to look at providing more of the public good and investment into our Santa Barbarian citizenry. Why? If we're a tourist-based economy and we neglect Santa Barbara city services, then what happens is people get frustrated, there's a vacancy. Again, we have to look at the city's books. There's government overexpenditures. 3 years or 12 quarters of fiscal structural deficit is not necessarily good accounting. When you talk about encumbrances and just pushing operating projects next year, we'll have an operating budget the following year. So again, my name is Crucito Herrera Cruz. I'm running for District 1 elections. Yo soy Crucito Herrera Cruz. Por favor, los que están escuchando, en el pueblo, el City Council no está haciendo su trabajo. Si tienen que dejar más servicios a la comunidad de Santa Bárbara. Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Next speaker is Tony Becerra.
Mayor, City Councilman, Council. I'm speaking on item number 9. Is that possible to do now, or should I wait till later?
That's later on, so you have to submit a speaker slip for that.
I did. I'd put number 9 on there.
Okay.
Yeah. So should I just wait then?
What says it on there?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe I should look at that. So yes, we'll wait for that then, Mr. Becerra.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right, do we have any speakers on the line?
We do, Mr. Mayor, one moment. This is Victoria Malero. Victoria Malero, please go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, hello, council members and mayor. I'm here to bring attention to the vandalism and destruction that has been occurring on the east side. I know sign stealing happens in every election, but what is happening on the east side is extreme. My mother's house has been targeted not once or twice, but 3 times because she has Councilmember Alejandro Gutierrez's signs in her yard. Before the last time, she even moved a sign within her property behind a gate with hopes that the perpetrator would not trespass beyond the gate, but that one was taken as well. This makes us feel violated, attacked, and targeted as we see signs for other candidates left intact. Another issue is the defacing and vandalism of the signs themselves on Milpas Street. When I drive down Milpas while taking my kids to school or bringing them home, they are shocked and don't grasp why someone would deface the sign of a person running for public service. I try to set an example for my kids and teach them to respect others, and this is a horrible example of behavior that is happening on the east side. I'm not seeing this happen on the west side or the Mesa, only the east side and only against Councilmember Gutierrez. I am here to publicly denounce this behavior and that this is not a reflection of what the east side is or what we should strive to be. Thank you.
All right, any further speakers online?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, very good. And with that, we will go to our poll consent item, which was item 5, which has already been read, and Mr. Friedman has already explained why he's going to step aside. I know, that's what I said. All right, I'll entertain a motion on item 5. Moved by Alejandro Gutierrez.
Second.
Second by Megan Harmon. May we have the vote, please?
Very good. That's a motion on item 5, motion by Councilmember Alejandro Gutierrez, seconded by Councilmember Harmon. Please go ahead and vote. Very good.
Thank you. Passes 5 in favor, 1 abstention, and 1 absence. Thank you.
Very good. And the abstention is Councilmember Friedman.
All right, correct. Okay, there's Eric Friedman back. And we'll go to council member committee assignment reports. Does anybody have an assignment report to give? Mr. Friedman.
I attended the Library Advisory Board, and we discussed the upcoming Plaza Palooza that is coming this Sunday at noon at Library Plaza, and the fencing is down, so everybody please go check it out. It looks amazing and is a big boost for downtown.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, with that, we will move on to the next agenda item. We have something to read, Madam Clerk.
That is item 9, Safe Streets for All Action Plan, Pedestrian and Bicycle Master Plans, and Vision Zero Strategy Implementation Update Resolution, and recommendation of the council, A, adopt by reading of title only, a resolution of the council of the city of Santa Barbara amending resolution number 24066, adopting the budget for fiscal year 2025 to appropriate federal safe streets and roads for all funds and city funds for the city of Santa Barbara's Safe Streets for All Action Plan.
Thank you. Ms. Grant.
Yes. Good afternoon, Mayor and council members. So Jessica Grant, Supervising Transportation Planner with the city, here to talk about the Safe Streets for All Action Plan and also to provide updates from the Pedestrian and Bicycle Master Plans and Vision Zero Strategy Implementation Update. Specifically, what we're asking for is to appropriate the federal grant for the city to prepare a Safe Streets for All Action Plan and also to appropriate the city matching funds. And then for the Public Works Director to execute the grant agreement and receive updates again on the pedestrian and bike master plans and Vision Zero strategy. Wanted to first begin with a little bit of context when we look at traffic collisions in the city. And just as a way of background, we've had about 25 traffic fatalities from the city from 2017 to 2021. This is data from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. When we dive into some of our collision data a little bit further at the state level, when we're in the context of 105 cities of similar size, we rank about 15th out of the 105 cities for total fatal and injury-related collisions. I'm reading off of the latest of 2021, which is the latest year that's posted on the Office of Traffic Safety web page, but we also rank number 3 in alcohol-related collisions, as well as motorcycle collisions, number 7 pedestrian collisions, and number 1 in bicycle-related collisions. I do want to have an asterisk to some of that data that we have, over time, have built a really strong active transportation network versus some cities of our size that are more vehicle dominated. And so we will always rank a little bit higher just to put that in context. But nonetheless, it's not good to have these high of rankings. So a lot of this presentation is to provide updates on where there were traffic-related collisions that had engineering solutions to have stronger pedestrian and bicycle networks. As you know, pedestrians and cyclists are our most vulnerable users of our roadways. And so it's very important when we have safety enhancements that we have strong pedestrian and bicycle-related safety enhancements. So when this plan was adopted in 2006, 6, there was a long list of infrastructure-related in safety enhancements. This is reflected in detail in your council attachments. But specifically, when we look at pedestrian enhancements, it's not just the intersection, which is very important, but it's really about building the pedestrian network. Because when you walk, a typical walking distance for somebody before they choose a different mode of travel is about a half a mile to a mile. So when we think of doing pedestrian-related enhancements and routes, that's a normal route for a pedestrian to take. And of course, a lot of the safety enhancements have been in our downtown area and waterfront area. That's the highest modes that we see for pedestrian, high levels of pedestrian activity. And we, of course, have some projects that are funded but haven't been implemented yet. These are the ones that we have been working on a daily basis that you'll see coming to the city in 2027. It's improvements along Cliff Drive, essentially from Arroyo Barrel Beach all the way to Castillo-Montecito intersection. In a couple of weeks coming before you, there's safety enhancements in the Upper De La Vina corridor, right specifically in the vicinity of Cottage Hospital and all the related medical campuses. And of course, up in Upper De La Vina, we have a lot of apartments and higher density housing. And so a lot of those enhancements, when I talk about enhancements, what does that mean? It means high visibility crossings, pedestrian activated flashers, for some additional street lighting, where there's traffic signals, the pedestrian countdown timers that are very helpful for all users. So those types of things. Also coming is intersection enhancements along the San Andreas corridor, MODOC between Mission and Las Positas, and sprinkled throughout lots of different pedestrian improvements in the west side and lower west side. Milpas, we have done a lot of work over the years on Milpas Street, and specifically in the lower part just south of the freeway with some major sidewalk infill. And some intersection enhancements north of the roundabout, but with the active transportation program grant we're working on is just north of the roundabout to about Canon Perdido Street, so that puts you right at about Santa Barbara High School. A lot of crossing enhancements, again, with the high visibility crossings, additional street lighting, those types of things. So what remains unfunded needs in our pedestrian master plan? Castillo, we have done a lot of improvements along Castillo, but the last major section is right in the vicinity of the freeway. So we had been before you earlier this year for pedestrian enhancements between Montecito and Haley Streets. And we have a grant pending for that. We should receive notification, I believe, in a couple of weeks. Upper State Street is another area that we anticipate the safety action plan to dive into a little bit more detail. Part of my job also is overseeing a lot of the land development projects. We're seeing a lot of growth in the Upper State Street area. So a lot of the pedestrian-related improvements are tied to private development. But again, we anticipate, and what we're hearing from the communities, emails, that there needs to be more attention in that area. Of course, there's a lot of attention right now on downtown State Street. The pedestrian master plan had flagged State Street as at some point we would need higher levels of pedestrian space in the State Street corridor, and that's being looked at as the State Street master planning effort. Las Positas, we've made tremendous improvements. We now have a multi-use path from MODOC along Las Positas all the way down to the roundabout on Cliff Drive. But there's a big need to address going eastbound from Las Positas on MODOC all the way to State Street. That's been in our capital program to look at for a study for that. But that's, again, a documented need that we need to dive into further. And then last piece that hasn't been addressed yet is the Mission Canyon area. We've, again, worked closely with the county for improvements for there to strengthen connections between the Mission and Natural History Museum, Rocky Nook Park. Just have not had the funding source to come through with that particular area, especially in the vicinity of the Mission Canyon Bridge. So let's now move into the bicycle master plan side, just to provide an update. The city of Santa Barbara has been always very forward-thinking. We were one of the very first bicycle master plans in the city, dating back to 1974. So the last significant update was in 2016. So although we had a fairly good bike network, it was really the focus of the 2016 master plan, again, was filling in the gaps. So when I talk about pedestrians and their normal route from about a half a mile to a mile, when we look at network improvements, from a bicycling perspective, we need to be looking at 4 to 5 mile range for cyclists to create really strong routes. And of course, with all the e-bikes on our system, that network routes even further. But in this image, you'll see in red is all the bike infrastructure that's come in since 2016. Mainly funded with the California Active Transportation Program, and then also synergies with our pavement maintenance program as well. One of the goals of the bicycle master plan was, since our last update, I think we had 61 miles of bike facilities. The goal was to get to 91 miles of bike facilities. We are currently at 98 miles of bike facilities in the city. So we have met that metric. It was to have that by 2030. So the bicycle master plan, a lot of the infrastructure improvements that were part of the plan were to basically have infrastructure improvements in 5-year intervals. Again, it's detailed in the attachments from your council agenda report. I'll just pick one to highlight. One in the first phase that's been tremendously successful is the Ortega Street bike lanes. That is basically an on-street bike lane from a pavement maintenance project that gets you from downtown to the Santa Barbara Junior High. One project to point out in the phase 2 projects, there had been a call for the Chino Street Bicycle Boulevard. That's a bike-friendly street, low volume. After further review and further discussions with the community, the scope was modified to Gillespie Street in San Pasqual. Why? Because Gillespie had 2 or 3 actually schools right off of that street, so critical to have strong, safe routes to school. And then San Pasqual is not only a school route, but a huge commuter route coming to and from Santa Barbara. And that has been very successful. It's really fun, and I know that Councilmember Oscar Gutierrez can attest to. It's really great to see all the kids and the bike buses, and not just for one event. It's a daily thing, getting to and from school on their bicycles, and so that's been a fun and welcome neighborhood improvement. And then the last of phase 3, these are all the projects to be implemented by 2030. And then I'll just draw your attention to the Cliff Drive plan. This was again part of State Route 225 that was relinquished back in 2014. There was a long list of items along Cliff Drive to improve. This will be a game changer, basically taking Cliff Drive that's essentially been designed as a highway to make it look like a local street. It will have a 3.1, a separated bike path, and of course, a lot of pedestrian amenities to cross Cliff Drive, where now it's very infrequent crossings along that very long route. So that construction is anticipated again in 2027. Besides the infrastructure improvements from the pedestrian and bicycle master plans, there were programs as well associated with that. And the one I'll draw your attention to is the public bike share program that went into effect in January of 2021. The pilot program, per council direction, is to continue through 2027 with hopes of really making that program permanent. What we found to date that it's a really viable and low-cost form of public transportation. And to date, there's been 47,000 trips and 1.5 million miles traveled on those bikes. And so very, very impressive. And then a lot of our messaging with the pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure projects has really been a Vision Zero focus. These are all very safe projects that meet the Vision Zero. And again, that's for those tuning in at home unfamiliar with Vision Zero, it's to eliminate all fatalities and severe injuries in our roadways. So we've had a lot of messaging with that, and we'll continue to have some general messaging in related to safety for all road users in this coming year and next. And speaking about Vision Zero, that was the third program that we wanted to provide an update on. So the Vision Zero strategy was adopted by City Council in 2018, again, to eliminate traffic fatalities and injuries in our roadway. The baseline year that we use for collision data, and when we think of collision data, it's not every year. It's usually we want to look holistically at 5-year, 10-year increments, and so this is just a snapshot in time of the first 10-year increment from 2008 to 2017. This is just a heat map of the collisions, with red being the most amount of collisions, followed by orange, yellow, and green. The goal over time is that we don't have any color on our collision maps. Within the Vision Zero strategy, there were 23 council-designated high-priority Vision Zero corridors, and really to look at engineering and enforcement solutions along these roadways. So again, in detail, and the council agenda report is updated on some of the infrastructure that we've been working on. And as I just discussed, like Cliff Drive, that's currently in design. The lower State Street area, that's our Vision Zero State Street undercrossing that will be opening up hopefully spring or summer of 2025. De La Vina, we've had a lot of attention in the lower part, the downtown part, and again with the improvements coming to the upper De La Vina area. And of course, we've had a lot of improvements on Carrillo in the vicinity of the west side and going up Carrillo Hill, and Las Positas, of course, with the multi-use path. So that brings us to, we've done a lot in a relatively short amount of time to get a lot of network improvements related to pedestrian and bicycle safety and just overall roadway safety projects. But what does the next 10 to 15 years look like, and how are we going to prioritize that? And really, again, it's to focus on our high injury networks where we see repeated collisions, and also along routes for safe routes to school. So what recently came online from the federal government through the bipartisan infrastructure law was the Safe Streets for All grant program. And they're currently in year 3 of the program. It's a 5-year program where they're designating nationwide about $5 billion towards infrastructure. So the program itself funds two major aspects of it. And one of them is preparing active safety action plans. And then the other part is the implementation. So that would be your implementation grant, infrastructure grants. But we can't apply for an infrastructure grant until we have an adopted safety action plan. So that's what we had applied for, and we were successfully awarded $799,000 from the U.S. Department of Transportation to put together this action plan. And as a requirement for the federal grants, it's very typical that there's a 20% city match that would come from our Transportation Development Act funds on the city match side. So the goal of the plan is to prevent traffic-related fatalities and serious injuries within the city while increasing safe, healthy, and equitable mobility for all by strategically identifying infrastructure improvements that remove barriers to safety and mobility. And again, this is probably the look at infrastructure for the next 10 to 15 years of planning. As you know, we've currently have very transformative projects that are currently in design. And part of the, for this federal grant, there are required action plan components to it, which are listed here, leadership and commitment and goal setting, to have a planning structure, and that's basically like a hearing board. In our case, the Transportation Circulation Committee is our hearing board for all things related to road safety, and then followed by City Council. Is to have a safety analysis, so that's, again, diving in further from our Vision Zero strategy and continuing to analyze that in a little bit more detail. Engagement and collaboration, again, a big focus with our local schools and for those that live along the high priority corridors. There's equity considerations. I'll talk about that in a moment. Policy and process changes, and we have very strong policies in our existing documents, but are we missing anything else that we should be looking at? So that's another part. Strategy and project selections. What we hope as part of this grant is to analyze at a conceptual level maybe 3 to 4 infrastructure projects, so that we're ready when an infrastructure grant comes along, we have the scope dialed in. And then progress and transparency, and that's just the normal check-ins. This planning effort's a 2-year process, and again, with the Transportation Circulation Committee, stakeholders, with the schools, and those types of things. Getting back to just the top part of leadership and goal setting, I really feel that City Council has already positioned us really well in this leadership, because already being adopted a Vision Zero city, we're already in alignment with a lot of the goals and values that this federal program has. So just as a reminder, our core principles and how it was a big paradigm shift on how we look at our roads is basically that every person matters, life is most important, people make mistakes, drivers have the critical responsibility, pedestrians and cyclists are our most vulnerable users in the roadway. We need to focus on dangerous locations and the behaviors, and government shares the responsibility for safe streets. So if I were to draw that parallel, the federal highway safety and their umbrella is very much the Vision Zero philosophy. So I'll just read some of their taglines on the top of the circle, and the graphic on your left side is death and serious injury is unacceptable. Humans make mistakes. Humans are vulnerable. Responsibility shared. safety is proactive, and redundancy is crucial. So again, as we're putting together these plans, it's very much under the umbrella of these philosophies. Again, as we look at safety of our roadways to make sure when you go from destination to destination, you get there safely. And again, just we'll take a deeper dive. We're trying to automate a lot of our collision data and analysis using GIS. So we're currently working on that. Again, when we had 23 designated corridors, we do anticipate that to change a little bit as we dive more in the collision data analysis. As far as for the equity component, every grant has a different definition of what a disadvantaged community is. And of course, this program has a different definition than some of the other grant sources we work in. But this was specifically when we apply for grant funding, they will say you have to use X, Y, and Z. In this case, it was the U.S. Department of Transportation's Equitable Transportation Community Explorer map. So this is, again, it's based on a few categories, but these are the areas in the city that are considered disadvantaged. Mainly because we have higher percentages that are below the 200% of the federal poverty line, has an environmental burden, again, freeway adjacent. But these are also the areas that we have a high percentage of residents not owning a vehicle, so very dependent on our walking and biking and transit infrastructure. And it's also disproportionately, when you look at federal data, those that are often living in disadvantaged areas are often the ones that are the higher percentage getting involved in the traffic-related collisions. So we'll dive again deeper into that analysis with this safety action plan. What's really cool about this not only the safety action plan, but there's a synergy. So UCSB had applied for a supplemental grant. It's Tristan Nelson out of the Dangerman Department of Geography at UCSB. She's done a lot of analysis for bikemaps.org. Really looking at walking and biking safety in communities, sort of nationwide and in the Canadian region as well. So they were awarded just recently, it was just announced about a month ago, to collect pedestrian and cycling count data in the city of Santa Barbara and to integrate the collision data with the count data and really to identify unsafe pedestrian and cycling hotspots to inform future road safety audits. What we're also looking at region-wide is a whole different way we look at our regional bike network. Right now, our bike network, if I were to tell somebody, a resident, well, take the class 1 path to the class 3 facility to the class 2, does that really resonate with a resident or a tourist? No. I think if you were to think of, like, if you were to go skiing and you're at a mountain, the green circles, that's your easy routes, lower on the mountain, to the intermediate routes, to the double black diamond. And it will be something similar, but probably described, this is a low-stress route within the city of Santa Barbara. And those things, I think that would resonate more with our community and tourists coming to be here. So that's kind of the part 2 that will be tagged onto the action plan. So again, this is a 2-year effort. Right now, we're really into we would start immediately into all the GIS mapping again for not only the collision data, but the infrastructure improvements that have been done. and then coming soon to our network. And then also to already begin additional outreach at the schools. We've already been working on a survey with the school district that would go out, it's on schedule to go out next month, asking families on information related to their routes to school and sort of what are the stress points. We would have follow-up surveys and approaches. And again, our draft plan would go before the Transportation Circulation Committee, and then also just committee and stakeholders reviews, and then eventually return to City Council for review and approval. So with that, just as a reminder, we hope today that City Council can appropriate the grant funding to allow us to prepare this the safety plan. And thank you very much. And we're here if you have any questions.
Mr. Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple. I just want confirmation on that first chart of traffic safety stuff that first is worst, right? Yeah, so it's, I think you could emphasize that when you're looking at it, because somebody could read it like, oh yeah, we're doing way better than 104 other cities, but to be first in something is not the case. So the bottom three categories are, this is all involving a vehicle, right? So it's a car versus a motorcycle, car versus pedestrian, and car versus bicycle, right?
Correct.
Okay. And is the comparison when it's of 105 cities of similar size in California, are those being cherry picked out, or are they like the 105 cities all over California that are most similar to us? And that's the end of them that are similar?
Councilmember Jordan, through the mayor, it's all based upon population
Okay.
size. So it's only similar in population, but could be very different. We could have the same population size and it be really a car community. So it's not all apples to apples with respect to that.
Okay. Then, you know, just looking back to prior South, so I'm just looking at some of the lists of unfunded, and they're all challenging, mostly for space, you know, like we ran out of public space to do stuff. Like if it was 100 years ago, we'd just be taking a space and then letting people build after that. But so say when you're looking at Upper State, I'm not familiar with any efforts to actually horse trade with developments on letting pedestrian or bike paths go right through private property, because I don't know how the heck you're going to find space on State Street as it exists today. So have there been any of those kind of efforts? Do you have that talk when you get down there in your cubicles and say, well, put the yellow stickies up on the wall, and what about this? What about that?
Great question, Councilmember Jordan, through the mayor. Most of it, there is adopted Upper State Street guidelines, but when you read what the public improvements are, it's to be consistent with the pedestrian master plan, and which is now, also thank council for approving the updates to Title 2244, which is now by ordinance for the pedestrian improvements. You mentioned space. Tight on space in the Upper State Street area, so what it looks like is dedications when we want the ideal sidewalk size. So we do have one development currently under review. It's a larger development for the redevelopment of the Macy's. That's part of the La Cumbre Mall campus. And so they are required to have some dedication to have appropriate sized pedestrian facility on State Street and Hope Street. That's just one example. On those larger developments, we do incorporate bicycle connections. Bicycling is tricky in the Upper State Street area. Also looking at kind of like what we did in Milpas of looking at parallel routes. Sometimes you can't get a strong bike route on Milpas, for example, but we could on Aliso. So looking to see if those are other opportunities. And so through this planning network and discussions with some of the school families, as well as what are some of those alternatives.
Okay, sounds like you're working off of what we own already, and I'm really kind of talking about going right through the center of a property or something, so I'll work on that for you. Las Positas, are we talking about using the golf course for a corridor for a bike lane, right next to the existing fence, and just claiming a little bit of 10 feet of space with a fence there to protect it from a golf ball? Because you can literally go the entire length of where you want to go and not need an outlet almost, right?
That was also mentioned in the bicycle master plan of some bypasses to Las Positas, and it would follow sort of between golf course adjacent to behind Adams Elementary School, and then you would have a connection into kind of the Kyriel area. But those are things that at the time when we were triaging the bike network, it wasn't as high on the list as some of the other areas. But now that we've addressed some of the higher level network changes, I think that's going to be the next 2.0 discussion.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On slide, let's see, it's where you show the map of the hotspots. Can you show to the public, is there a way we can zoom in and show the public exactly where those hotspots is? And just, talk about that map for a second, please? Because what the public sees is just, an image and. So if you could just,
Sorry, Councilmember Alejandra Gutierrez through the mayor. This is a blow up. This was all documented in the Vision Zero strategy from 2018, just for the public tuning in, and that we have on our Vision Zero webpage. So the areas that had the biggest red blotches were right in the vicinity of State and Gutierrez. And yes, State Yananali. Trying to think. Yes. Yeah. And then Castillo Underpass. And hold on, let me zoom. And anyway, so those were some of the biggest spots. I would say, just in general, we have higher volumes of cyclists on State Street and higher levels for pedestrians, and so not totally abnormal that would be our highest amount of collisions. But yeah, we had with the Vision Zero State Street undercrossing project that's currently under construction, that was a high level of vehicle versus pedestrian collision standpoint.
Thank you. You had a slide that talked about pedestrian enhanced safety. Could you explain to the public who's involved in making these decisions? And the reason that I'm asking, there's a lot of concerns, especially on the Liso bike path. Mm-hmm. So I was wondering, who's involved in those decision makings? And I'll just be very, very frank. So the islands in the middle of those four stops have been a little problematic for the people in the district. And I've talked to your team, and I understand it takes time for the community to adjust. And if I see it in the standpoint of a fire engine going through, do you have law enforcement, like police and fire, that are involved in this process when creating like those islands in the middle of those four stops?
So let me break your question down into a few different points. So the first was who's involved in the process for identifying infrastructure-related improvements, whether it's bicycle, pedestrian, or vehicle-related safety improvements. And that is twofold. Part of it is our collision data analysis that we look at to highlight if we have collision patterns. So an independent safety traffic analysis. But the other part is really the robust efforts that we do during these master planning processes, and then that are done at like the higher level that get documented of intersections of concern that are through these processes. And so when we go out to the community, it's not, oh, let us know where you want a stop sign or a traffic signal, or it's not that conversation. The conversation is, what do you feel when you're getting to work, whether it's walking, biking, or driving, or you're walking, biking, and driving your kids to school? What is the stress points? Describe what's happening. That is the most useful to us when we're trying to select the appropriate engineering solutions, if there is an engineering solution. Sometimes it's an enforcement issue, sometimes it just needs more education. So that's done at a high level, and then through the processes, then we have like a list of infrastructure improvements and planning documents. So that's, again, typical for a bicycle master plan, pedestrian master plan. We've also had neighborhood-specific, where we had the East Side Neighborhood Transportation Management Plan. We had the West Side Lower West Management Plan, where we really dive in deeper. And even once we have a project, or we are lucky to get grant funding, then we do even more outreach on that. So that's, again, just a general. What's specific to the Alisos, again, that stems back to conversations dating back to about circa 2011, which was to have a strong north-south bike route in the east side to get to and from schools and critical destinations within the neighborhood, and also from the neighborhood to downtown, et cetera. So that was documented, a lot of improvements for the East Side Neighborhood Transportation Management Plan. And then we dove in a little bit deeper in the bicycle master plan of what the street would be. And then we received grant funding, and then there was further discussions. So it's kind of a continued, long years of continual discussions with eventually we get grant funding to do the projects. So again, in order to make a safe facility for all ages and for biking, we had to limit the amount of vehicles on that street. How you do that is we had traffic diversion, just similar to like Gillespie Street, for example. So is it loved by everybody? No, it could be an inconvenience to a driver who has to drive one block around. But for a cyclist or pedestrian, it's much easier. And again, our whole goal of a circulation element is to have choices in our facilities to highlight, or to be able to have a system where you don't have to drive to every destination, that you have a choice of walking and biking. So that's just again, speaking higher level.
And this is
as
the
far
process
as for
you-
emergency access, that's something that we also work closely with fire and the police department on.
Give me 1 second.
Yes.
And this is the process you use for every sector of the city, right?
Yes, and it's an iterative process because none of these projects are cheap. It's a big investment, and it takes many of grants to establish network improvements. And so we begin in the concept stages to the planning stages, again, where we have adopted plans, and then we get funding for the actual infrastructure. So it's an ongoing conversation with the community. Getting back to emergency access, anytime that there's changes in our network, that is something that we work closely with PD and fire on during the planning processes, making sure we have certain turning movements. Those traffic diverters, for example, on Alisos, a fire truck can go through them, whereas just a standard vehicle cannot. So those types of things that we
Did you just say
look
that
at.
a fire truck can go through them?
They can go through them. They're meant to, the way that they're designed is the wheelbase for the fire engine. And so it can, so a fire engine can go through. But again, we're trying to keep the vehicle volumes low for the general driving population on that particular street.
And did you do like a practice run with the fire engine?
We will go out with the chiefs, and a lot of this we can do in auto, like turn in the engineering phases for certain size trucks. But yes, we did walk, there was a specific, actually on the west side, that had a larger sort of traffic diverter at Gillespie and Valerio, and that was something too. That, yeah, we needed to make sure we had the turning radius for that.
How much was the Alisos bike path project? How much did the city spend, and how much did we receive in state, grants to fund that specific project?
I will have to get back to you on that. I think it was 1.4, about one. Yeah, order of magnitude about 2 million, but that was. Yes, and that included a lot more improvements beyond just Alisos. So they had the Alisos improvements, a lot of sidewalk infill on Alisos, but a lot of intersections also adjacent to the high school and junior high as well, and some improvements on Haley Street and some of the striping as well for the conflict, striping from the east side to downtown.
Thank you. I have a question for somebody from the fire department. I appreciate the work that Ms. Grant, you have done. Living in the district, and I think my district is very unique when it comes to change, especially because you have a lot of the working class that lives there that work out of that area, and they do use their vehicles. And we have a huge parking challenge, and there's multi-families living in one household. And it is a little different than, let's say, the district that Ms. Nedden represents, where there's a little bit more space to navigate. In theory, this is perfect, but in reality, has the fire department found those areas a little challenging when they cross those intersections with the islands? Like, the time to get to an emergency, is it taking you guys longer? And the same question goes for PD. If you guys are chasing somebody, are those islands causing, delays on answering those emergency calls?
Sure. Good afternoon, Mayor Rouse, council members, Councilmember Alejandro Gutierrez. Your first responders, police and fire, we get paid to adapt. We get paid to overcome challenges in front of us. These folks train for that every day. Do some of the permanent infrastructures pose a challenge? They can. We've learned to adapt and to maybe have a different response route than we would. It's hard to give you a definite answer if it's caused delays, only because there's a human factor when responding to a call for service. The police department doesn't come the same direction every time. The fire department doesn't come the same direction every time. But are some of those options off the table now because of some of the permanent infrastructure? Yeah, they are. So we have to adapt with some of those new response routes.
And the reason I'm asking is because that area is already very impacted with vehicles, and there's a lot of people that walk. And those 4 stops, people have, the community members have asked for many, many years. So they're very, very happy that we have those 4 stops. The islands have been a concern, especially because we have a lot of seniors that live there that avoid milpas, and so they go to the background. And the community there is having a hard time not being able to, turn left. And when we have seen 911 calls or the fire department, I've gotten a lot of complaints that the perception out there is that law enforcement and fire getting to the calls on time. And it's mainly for the people that are trying to avoid milpas. Like, the district is just very different than other districts. And I'm really concerned with just having those islands in the middle, and I understand there's a safety factor for the people that are riding bikes, but I understand that you guys are adapting all the time, but is this were you guys part of this conversation when these islands were created in this bike path?
I believe so. That was before my tenure, but I believe the fire department was included in those. The transportation division always includes us when it comes to especially permanent infrastructure. And I will say we've asked them to modify some of them because of the turning radius, which they've graciously done. We've had to learn that through response times and response efforts. So your district's not alone. I would say this entire city is hard to drive a fire engine in. It's hard to have multiple PD units and 4 or 5 fire engines show up somewhere, anywhere in this city. So again, anytime we add permanent infrastructure, it's going to limit some of our opportunity to maybe respond this way instead of this way, when we only have maybe one way to respond now. So.
Thank you. And these questions are mainly questions that I hear from the community. If I'm asking is just for clarification. So thank you so much.
Yeah, and I think it's important to, too, is, again, Alisos is designed so it's much like a lot of the neighborhood streets, it's lower in vehicle volume. So when you think of emergencies, what's the biggest impediment to getting to emergency is vehicles. So when you have a low volume street, it's easier to navigate on a low volume street than a higher volume one.
When you're, okay. No. That's
Okay,
it. Thank you.
so we are getting into our specific appointment times that we laid out for some other folks. So Mr. Gutierrez and Mr. Friedman both have a question, but I really don't want to get into a discussion because we really need to move this along. So do you have something really brief you can lay out and let the 2 public speakers ask questions, and then we'll have to table the discussion until after we do our interviews, because we're way behind. Okay, so let's go ahead and just table this item, and to the public speakers, I have to apologize, but we have to get into our interviews, so we're going to have to, Mr. Becerra, Mr. Remus, we'll have to do this in a little bit. Okay, so with that, we're going to table that item. We're going to move on to our interviews, and we'll start out with Paul Bowen. Apologize for the delays.
No problem.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question, please?
I'm sorry?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Well, since we have members of the public here to ask questions about this item, shouldn't
We have to table that as well.
Okay.
We've made these commitments to these folks and brought them all in, so
All right.
that's what I just said. All right, Mr. Bowen, go right ahead.
Well, thank you very much. I'm here to interview for the Airport Commission. I'd like to start off with a compliment for our current airport director. He's doing a good job with a tough situation that he inherited, which is the noise issues out in the city of Goleta. Most of us there get woken up at about 5:15 every morning these days. I've been endorsed for appointment to the Santa Barbara Airport Commission by the city of Goleta. I'm hoping that through better noise abatement procedures and through civic engagement with the residents of Goleta, that we can promote cooperation between the two cities. If I'm appointed to the Airport Commission, it will show that the city of Santa Barbara does want to be a good neighbor. If appointed, I will work to represent the needs of the citizens of Goleta and the airport. If the needs of the people surrounding the airport can be represented, it will help the long-term success of the Santa Barbara Airport. For my qualifications, I was an airport commissioner from 2018 to 2022, including some time as vice chair. I was the chair of the noise abatement subcommittee. I've been actively involved in the Santa Barbara Airport for the last 33 years. I've attended the Airport Commission meetings for the last 12 years. As an airport commissioner, I never missed a meeting. We're currently having trouble getting quorums, so that's an important note. Locally, I serve on the executive board of directors for the Alpha Resource Center. Formerly, I was the Scout Troop 4 Assistant Scoutmaster in charge of the outdoor activities. I'm a vigil member of the Order of the Arrow. I'm an active volunteer at the Land Trust at Arroyo Hondo. I'm very involved with the outdoor school, and I'm currently serving on the Santa Barbara Airport Noise Abatement Committee. For many years, I was an active pilot with an aircraft based at Santa Barbara Airport. Now, due to a minor medical issue, my days of a pilot are over with. I've sold my airplane. I have the knowledge of a local pilot, but no conflicts of interest. I don't work at the airport. I have no financial interest in the airport. It's just my chance to give back. I'm well educated. I've got a master's degree in electrical and computer engineering from UC Santa Barbara, BS degree in electrical engineering from Cal Poly. I'm a successful businessman, engineer, and entrepreneur. I'm retired and available to be involved as an airport commissioner, and I'm trying to give back to the airport that has served me so well for the last 40 years. Hopefully, I'll be able to improve the relationship between the city of Santa Barbara and the city of Goleta. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Bowen? Mr. Jordan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Would you be willing to step off of the noise working group if appointed to the commission?
Absolutely, if it's required.
Thank you.
Further questions? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for replying. Jason Dominguez, our next applicant, and this is for Planning Commission. Look vaguely familiar.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and Council. So we are blessed to live in this country. We're blessed to live in this state. And more importantly, we're blessed to live in Santa Barbara. Santa Barbara is an amazing gem in a great state and a great country. And it's no accident, even though California has about 800 miles of coastline and 400 public beaches, Santa Barbara still shines the brightest. I lived for a while in Houston, Texas. That's where some of you know my better half and I met. And Houston doesn't have zoning, and it's very chaotic. And if you were a resident who lived there in a very invasive or noisy or otherwise disruptive business or institution moved in next to you, you didn't really have any recourse. So there's a few personal reasons that I'll list amongst my many reasons for wanting to be on the Planning Commission. And two of them revolve around my daughter. I want to make sure that the community that she grows up in is one that can continue to help children here thrive socially, economically, and in terms of their health. So that's one reason related to her. And then the second reason, I'm just spending way too much time with toddlers, and I want to increase my social and intellectual pursuits. So lest anyone think that I'm getting any special consideration from my colleagues, let me list a few of my bona fide qualifications. So I have several years' experience as a municipal attorney, both for the County of Santa Barbara and the City of Los Angeles. I also served for California Rural Legal Assistance, running their statewide environmental justice program. I worked with Legal Aid Foundation. And as I mentioned, I was on City Council, and I was the liaison to ABR, Planning Commission, HLC, and the Access Advisory Committee. So I have a lot of experience direct hands-on experience both with Planning Commission and the other agencies they work with. So to wrap up, I feel I understand the community needs, I understand the position, I'm committed to fair and sustainable development with an eye towards our critical housing needs. I understand the role of a planning commissioner, and I would be honored for your consideration.
Thank you. Are there questions for Mr. Dominguez? Thanks for applying. Appreciate
you all.
that. Cora Snyder, and applying for Water Commission.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. My name is Cora Snyder, and I'm here to reapply for Water Commission. I'm the current chair of the Water Commission and have served for the last 3 years. I think that the Water Resources Department provides the most essential service in the city, which is water and wastewater services. We all know that we can't get very far in a day without the reliable, safe water that we all need. As much of the state is facing worsening droughts and water supply challenges due to climate change, the city of Santa Barbara has really been a leader in conservation efforts and proactive planning in order to sustain a reliable and safe water supply for the city. And I would like to be able to keep contributing to that effort and advise it. And for my qualifications, I am a water policy researcher. And I also teach water policy at UC Santa Barbara and hope to continue to serve my community in this volunteer role on the Water Commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions for this applicant? Thank you very much. Appreciate your service. Steve Gregg is our next applicant for the Airport Commission.
Good afternoon, Mayor, council members. I'm Steve Gregg. First of all, thank you for even considering me for the position on the Airport Commission. I'm a resident of Goleta. I live right across from Lake Los Caneros, so I'm relatively close to the airport. I've been a resident of this area since the late 70s, so don't do the math. I don't want to know how long that is. But I've been here a long time. I've been involved in the business community for that period of time. I want to serve on the Airport Commission really from a different perspective maybe than, I don't have any real personal involvement with airports or with airplanes for that matter, but I have been involved in the business community. And I understand the value of a thriving and vibrant airport to the local economy, especially for areas like Santa Barbara. It's vital to our tourism industry. To be able to expand the reach that we have or that we can draw from for visitors coming here is a good thing for our community, good for economics. And I think it's a vital part of the startups that we're seeing now coming out of UCSB. We've been really fortunate to watch some really good companies come out of that organization, and those high-tech companies and jobs have been a real asset to the community, and I think that's a function of kind of not only where they're coming out of UCSB, but also the ability to get here. It's a much easier sell for folks to put a company here when you know you can get to places like Sacramento in the Bay Area and Utah and those types of places. So from my standpoint, I appreciate the value the airport brings to the local economy, and I also appreciate the value just from a personal side from the residents of it is nice to be able to fly out of Santa Barbara and not drive to LAX. So that's from the personal side, I see the value, and I appreciate the way the airport is allowing for more and more options for the residents. So that's why I'm here. Kind of qualifications, I have none in terms of actual airport. I've been involved in the business community. I've been on the chamber boards for decades. I'm currently serving on the South Coast Chamber Board of Directors. I chair the Public Policy Committee. I'm on the Deputy Sheriff's Association Board. I'm in another nonprofit organization. So been involved in the community, want to stay involved in the community. I am moving to retirement, so looking forward to being able to give back to the community. I feel like the staff and the elected officials have done a great job and have served me well in my professional career, and I want to try to give back. So that's it.
All right, very good, thank you. Do you have any questions for Mr. Gregg?
Great.
Thanks for applying, appreciate that. Jacob Lesnar Buxton, I don't see currently.
And he will not be interviewing today. He is ill, so he will
I'm
not
sorry,
be.
what did you say again?
He will not be interviewing today. He's ill.
You won't, okay, very good. I see our next applicant, Anthony Grumbine for HLC. Of course, I saw him a minute ago. He's over there. He's a busy guy.
All right.
Mr. Grumbine, go right ahead whenever you're ready.
Sure. Okay. So Mayor, City Council members, hopefully you know me. I wanted to reapply for Historic Landmarks Commission for another term. I thought long and hard about it, and I do think that at this point in all the conversations that I would be contributing something that I think has value to the city. And so I would like to ask if you would be willing to reappoint me. So that's it. Short and sweet.
Okay, very good.
Any questions or?
We got questions for Mr. Grumbine. Ms. Gutierrez.
I'm just curious.
Yeah.
You've been on this board for a while. What has been like one of the most challenging aspect of being a board member when it comes to maybe the public or even like the support that we can give you as council?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, and that's probably it's probably one of the biggest challenges is partly public perception, but public perception of an understanding of what we are doing and why we're making decisions a certain way versus another way, right? So you've got to weigh a lot of different things. You've got to have a bunch of different findings. So you get the neighborhood compatibility, mass bulk scale, views of the oceans, all these different things. And it's been my goal as part of this process to really have it be objectively, have something that's objectively defendable in terms of a reason for why you're making a decision one way, and that would be repeated continually if there was any other project in a similar circumstance. So that means that the design critique has to be based on objectively defendable and describable elements. So for example, the ceiling, to be able to tell someone, well, a beam should be at least a minimum of 10 inches wide and 12 inches tall to feel like it's actually going to carry the load, even if you're doing it with steel and you're hiding it. If we're going to do a wood ceiling, you need to have those proportions appropriate for the architecture and the language. And there's always rules, and all of the great architects that have worked in Santa Barbara have known those rules and have played with them. And so part of it is the challenge is describing what the rule and the reason is and where it comes from, and then trying to help the applicant understand that and all the public as well. And having sort of a defendable, repeatable process for that. So that's sort of been a big challenge, and one that I think that HLC has been good at and hopefully has gotten better at over the last couple of years. So.
Got a question from Ms. Knecht having to do with Mr. Grumbine. Is asking about the objective design standards off the table right now because we're in the middle of that?
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, substantive questions about the objective design standards or Mr. Grumbine's opinion with
Kind of
regard to?
his opinion, but I didn't know if that would be appropriate at this point in time.
I think it's appropriate to ask him his opinion about that and whether, I
Okay.
don't know if he's reviewed it or had any
Yeah, it
input
wasn't
into
specifically about
so-
it, but just about the idea per se about having an objective design standard versus because you are an HLC, which is a discretionary design review board. So is that something that would truncate your role as an HLC member because it is an objective design review standard? And of course, you're an architect, so both sides of the coin. So I'd like just to hear what you have to say about that.
Sure, and I was part of the original effort for objective design standards for the city to answer AB, whatever the bill was that at first allowed for or required an objective design standards or a version of it, and a streamlined process. So my quick summary is design review is better, does a better job as a process. And this has been, and architects deal with this from day one in schooling. You do a design, and then you have to put it up, and you have to present it, and you have to defend it, and you have professors that pick it apart, and everyone pushes and pulls on it. That has been a part of the profession, and it's usually the way that the best designs come. They sort of get sort of tested by fire and strengthened usually in that process, and especially if the design review board is a good board and the critique is a good critique. So that being said, I think that's the ideal way of getting the best architecture, is to have the process that architects have been schooled in and it has regularly produced great architecture. I think that's the best way. Now, that being said, I think that because of the state requirements for things and because of certain things the way they're going, we had to develop those objective design standards, and they continue to be developed. I think there's a benefit to objective design standards, and it's better than the alternative, which is no or poor objective design standards. But objective design standards is basically, in my sort of summary of it, is you are avoiding really bad architecture, and that's it. It's just keeping the bar from the bare minimum. It's not a great way to design. It doesn't produce necessarily great design. It can be you do great design within it, but it is limiting, and it's unfortunate that, in my opinion, it's unfortunate that we had to get to there, but I think there's benefit in having objective design standards for sure, because otherwise then you can go even lower. And so it keeps us from having terrible architecture. If that's that's my opinion. That's just my opinion personally.
That's as good an answer I could have expected. Thank you so much. I appreciate
Okay.
that. Any other questions for Mr. Grumbine? Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Okay, Patrick Campbell. Let me see, are we actually a few minutes early on this one? So I'm going to go down the list and see if Thomas Akula is here. And this is for HLC as well. We'll come back to Mr. Campbell when he comes in.
Hi, Mayor, council members. My name is Thomas Akula. I'm applying for the Historic Landmarks Commission. I also applied last year. I'm a Santa Barbara native and have been working in the field of architecture since 2005. I have a bachelor's degree in architecture and a master's degree in urbanism from the University of Notre Dame. My master's thesis, published 10 years ago, was focused on the re-urbanization of Santa Barbara with regard to its historic architectural character. Over the last year, I've become a lot more involved in the city and engaged in community issues with local groups, including the Santa Barbara Trust for Historic Preservation. I've had an ongoing discourse with different members of the AIA regarding our housing efforts, planning, and infrastructure in our city as a whole. Notably, I was part of the design team for the State Street Master Plan, working with Anthony Grumbine and our city's community development team. Through our work on the master plan, I learned a great deal about all of the challenges and opportunities we have downtown. We held a lot of design meetings and absorbed a huge amount of feedback from the advisory group, which was really helpful, and the community at large. This gave me an understanding of our city's needs and what role our downtown plays in that. Our team looked at many ways to improve the downtown area with special attention to understanding our local character. This local character is what gives our city a sense of place. How we preserve that and how we support that in new development is the challenge we have. I strongly support efforts to bring more housing to Santa Barbara, and with my background and experience in our city's historic character, I believe I could help facilitate these efforts as part of HLC with your support.
Very good. Do we have any questions for Mr. Sekula? All right, thanks very much. Appreciate that. And once again, I'll ask for Patrick Campbell, hasn't walked in yet. Okay. Christopher Richards. This is for Single Family Design Review Board.
Hello, how's everybody doing? My name is Christopher Richards. I'm an architect here in Santa Barbara. I've been living in this community for about 10 years and primarily working in single-family residential design. So very familiar with the whole process. Have had projects go through the city, gone through the county, every single design review board, and have very educated and knowledgeable about the process and kind of the time commitment that that takes. I've seen that firsthand with former bosses who've served on boards. So with that, I think that serving on the board is something that I've been very passionate about ever since moving to town. Something I've always been interested in, and hearing about the open chair was something that brought some real excitement to me. So other organizations that I serve on here in town are the AIA. I'm part of the executive committee board, and I'm the emerging professionals chair for that organization. So with that, I think I'll keep it short and sweet and say that's it. Open it to questions.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions here for Mr. Richards? Thank you so much for applying. Appreciate that. Rumi Jangahir Arshad for the Youth Council is not here yet. Wesley McCrae, Chris Klein, Craig Alexander. Okay, we're a little ahead of ourselves. This is okay because then we can have a chance to get their speakers in. Ed Lenvik is here. I see him for the Historic Landmarks Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. My 4 o'clock meeting got fast today.
This is how we operate here, Mr. Lenvik.
Yes. You're so lucky. Ed Lenvik, I currently serve on the Historic Landmarks Commission. I would certainly appreciate your considering me for reappointment to that commission. I have enjoyed the time I have served on HLC. And I feel that I have made a positive contribution to buildings that are built in the EPV area and in other locations that are of historic significance in the city. As you know, I'm not telling you anything, Santa Barbara is a very beautiful city, and it's recognized all over the world. And the buildings that are built in the Old Town area, in EPV in particular, are recognized. And I am forever amazed as I drive up and down State Street, Santa Barbara Street, Garden Street in particular, and I could take you on a tour of Garden Street of the buildings I really enjoy. We really have great architecture in Santa Barbara, and we have a lot to be thankful for. And I firmly believe that the HLC is strong, and it is very, very important in preserving the built environment as we know it today. I believe I'm qualified for the position. I have lived in Santa Barbara most of my adult life, graduated from Santa Barbara High School. Don't ask me how long ago that was, but I did. Worked in Los Angeles for a period of time and have been in Santa Barbara in a professional capacity since about 1966. I have led my own firm, Lenvik and Minor Architects, from 1975 through 2010, at which time I sold my interest in the business and retired. My firm has done many buildings in the South Coast area, in the Santa Barbara area, and in the downtown EPV area. So I am familiar with what is required to be successful, and I believe all the buildings that our firm has designed have been very, very successful. So I don't want to go too long. I think some of you, all of you probably know me, and I want to conclude by saying that I believe that I have the experience, I have the time and desire to be on the commission again. Thank you.
Thank you. We have questions for Mr. Lenvik.
I have a
Ms.
question.
Gutierrez.
Based on your wisdom and experience that you've had living here in the city and serving on this board, have you found that building within that, downtown area, has it been more challenging for developers, or has it been a little bit more easier since we have, there's history of buildings being built and, can you?
Mr. Mayor, council members, I think that building downtown in some ways has gotten more difficult because we are seeing an influx of much larger buildings downtown. We're going from basically a 1- and 2-story State Street, for instance, now to buildings that are 3- and 4 stories. And so it takes a little more work to get a good 3- and 4-story building. But we are doing it, and the buildings we see built downtown now, I think, are remarkably good. And I believe those buildings have been relatively easy to get approved. One of the things I've done on a number of occasions after we have gotten through with an applicant, and he's wrapping his drawings up and walking out, I ask them off to the side, has landmarks been difficult for you to get your approval, to move through? And have we been a delay in the approval process that you're after? And almost without exception, the architect at least gets up and responds to me and says, no, you guys are doing a good job. And I appreciate what your recommendations and what's happening. So who knows where the pushes are between client and architect, but we know where they are between design review and the architect. But I have not found that we have, at least expressing to me, opposition to what we're doing for downtown Santa Barbara. Now, that may not be the case with the greater city, what ABR deals with, but at least downtown Santa Barbara, I had a good response.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Jordan has a question.
So, thank you for your years of service. I'm looking forward to 4 more years of service.
Appreciate that.
Just tell me how you're looking into the future, though, with the resume you just rolled up and the fast-coming train, both of housing downtown and the equivalent of having state-mandated local designs that you literally start to suffer under for lack of discretion. Just how do you, I love to love you, love to hate you, depending upon a project, but how do you see the next 4 years under that type of burden?
Well, Mr. Mayor, council members, I don't have a great deal of, I'll take the last question first, a great deal of fear about mandated design, because I don't think it's going to be successful from the standpoint of the property owner, the architect. They're going to realize that they need to get behind the mandated controls that are being offered to them, and they're going to come to us. So I don't have a great deal of worry about that. I think that may be a problem, again, with ABR in the greater bulk of the city, but not in the EPV, area. What challenges do we face downtown? Again, it's, we've got to get housing downtown, and housing means that we're going to have to go up. And I personally believe that there are going to be good buildings built on State Street, on Chapala, on Anacapa, big buildings. And we are going to, as landmarks, we're going to have to be sure that they transition well to what is going to be lower as you go on out, Garden Street, Del Avino, whatever. But I think we're going to see and should expect to see bigger buildings downtown, and they will not destroy the character we have downtown. They will enhance it. I mean, you can walk downtown today, your eye level is here. You don't know it's up there. But when you stand back and look, we've got some pretty big buildings downtown right now, and they add, I think, to the character of the city. And we're going to see big buildings built that are really, really well done, and I'm there for them.
Thanks. My wife's got a hold of you, just like me, huh? Cup half full now, right?
Yes.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, further questions from Mr. Lundbeck? Thanks
Come on,
very
you got
much.
more questions to ask me?
Yeah.
I must have time left here. Thank you very much. I would appreciate your consideration for
Thank
my
you.
reappointment. Thank you.
I'm going to call out names once again. Patrick Campbell, Christopher Richards, Rumi Arshad, Wesley McCray, Chris Klein, Craig Alexander. None of the above are here. Unless you might happen to be. Are you here for the Youth Council? Are you Rumi? Yes, sir. Why don't you come on up? This is Santa Barbara for the Youth Council.
Yes, that's correct.
Go right ahead.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's nice to meet you all. My name is Rumi Jahangir Arshad. I am a junior at San Marcos High School, and I'm honored to be here today to share why I'm interested in serving on the Santa Barbara Youth Council. I've been raised in a household that values and practices civic responsibilities and community service. My mom showed me from a young age the value of giving back to the community through her service on the Goleta School Board Union. I've spent my high school and junior high years volunteering as a counselor for Safety Town, at the Food Bank, Goleta Library, the Center Homeless Solutions, and many others. I've also been a TA for chemistry classes, so I have experience with leadership and academics. I'm both willing and committed to serve, committed to the time required to serve on the council, and feel it would be a positive, collaborative experience. The Youth Council was formed in 1994 to gather information and give Santa Barbara youth a voice in how policies and services are created regarding youth programming and parks and recreation programs. And I feel that it is my skill and experience as junior class president and ASB member at San Marcos High School have taught me many leadership skills and effective communication skills that I would be able to bring to further help with the Youth Council. I also bring my experience from working at Blenders to the Youth Council. Working with the public and accountability is important for success in work and life, and I believe it's very important. Positive engagement with my peers and the community are also important, and I think that the Youth Council does a really good job at portraying that. I feel strongly in the teen community, and I believe that we need more access to quality programs, mental health services, positive recreation programs, and civic engagement. I would really love to be a part of this dynamic group of peers working together to ensure change in the community and growth. I would really like to help create programs that engage youth with teens in recreation, sports, and like I said, mental health. I feel that mental health is a very big issue within the youth community, and I think just bringing light upon that would be very helpful. These are important issues facing the youth of our community, and I would like to also learn more about policymaking and how the City Council creates and supports the youth. So by applying to the Youth Council, I believe that I will be given the opportunity to grow as a human being and learn within the Santa Barbara Santa Barbara youth. I believe that's...
All right, very good. Are there questions for this applicant? Mr. Gutierrez.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for applying. So how would you see us council members working better with the youth council?
Well, as in all of the members here?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that you guys have lots of experience and knowledge that the youth don't really have yet. And by giving that knowledge and like applying yourself within the community is very helpful, and you can be a role model for others, and I think that's really important.
Do you have any ideas or plans for the youth council, your role on the youth council?
Yeah, like I said, mental health, really big issue with the youth. I know many of my peers struggle and they feel that they don't have any outreach with their struggles, and I think I would be able to bring that knowledge and that idea of mental health to the youth council and just build upon that.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions for the applicant? Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Thank you. It was nice meeting you all.
And let's see, Wesley McCray, Chris Klein, come on up. Citizens Oversight Committee.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Nice to be here with you again. I'm interested in the hospitality committee position within the Citizens Oversight Committee. As past chair of Visit Santa Barbara, I have fewer meetings to go to in the next year or 4 years. So I have some time, and I'd like to continue to be able to help in any way that I can the community in which I live and work. I've reviewed what the Oversight Committee does as it relates to Measure C, and then the approval of funds for expenditures items like the police station and city streets and drainage infrastructure that has some connectivity to my role as board chair of the Creeks Committee. I just really saw this as an opportunity again to represent the lodging community that I'm a part of as well as my community, and I'm happy to spend a little time in doing it and find it interesting. And so I just wanted to come by and thank you for the opportunity to do so, and see if you had any questions about my volunteering for this position.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Klein? Thank you. Mr. Gutierrez.
Sorry, can you just go over your experience with law enforcement?
With law enforcement?
Yeah.
I've never been in law enforcement, but I have, I would say, a lot of experience as a hotel general manager in my relationship with local law enforcement and fire. Many times I describe the hotel business as really running a small city. Everything that can happen in a community will happen in a hotel after a certain amount of time. And so sometimes that brings challenges where we need the support of local law enforcement or fire. And so in that role, I've had a lot of contact over the years.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks very much, appreciate it.
Let's see, Craig Alexander, not here. Eric Gonzalez. Margaret Croco, I know you're here. This is for the library board.
Good afternoon, Mayor Rouse and City Council members. My name is Margaret Croco, and I'm the chair of the Santa Barbara Library Advisory Board. I'm here this afternoon to respectfully request your consideration for a second term on this board. I've been privileged to be a member of the board for 4 years and honored to have been voted by other members to be chair of the board a year ago. Among the many things I've learned during my first term have been the varied contributions made by the library to the community overall. The library provides books and materials, of course, for readers of all ages, but also myriad educational and informational services, computer access and problem solving, occupational support, language learning, reading instruction, and assistance of many kinds to our unhoused population. As you know, Library Advisory Board members speak to you annually during the budget season on behalf of the library's needs. We're especially grateful, especially at this moment in time with the Plaza Palooza coming up in a couple of days, for your support through Measure C that, along with funding from the Library Foundation, have produced such a glorious new venue for future events, along with renovations of the staff workspace and the main elevator at Central. We're also grateful for the financial support that allowed the library to return last year to a 7-days-a-week schedule. During my 4 years on the board, the library has also faced many challenges. Budgetary issues remain a prominent one, which is why I sent a letter recently to local news outlets in support of Measure I. This is not the first time that I've written such letters, since I see it as part of my responsibility to help the public understand the challenges faced by the library in providing the best experience possible for our community. Over the last few years, the board has provided support and guidance also to library staff in dealing with construction issues, personnel changes, and the rising costs of digital materials. My first term has also provided me with a deeper knowledge of the library's place within the constellation of city departments. A second term on the board would allow me to leverage that knowledge in providing further support to library leadership and its positive interface with city staff and the city council, along, of course, with the public in general. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. And you got a big weekend coming up, I understand.
Very exciting.
Are there questions for Ms. Croco? Mr. Jordan.
Kind of fibbed. I don't have a question. I just want to say thank you for agreeing to re-up. It's been a rough 2 years, and we should be thanking you. You shouldn't be thanking us. So.
Oh, that's very kind of you. Thank you, Councilman. It really is a privilege. I have not had the privilege of many of you in spending my whole life here in Santa Barbara. I've lived in a variety of places, and it's been a wonderful entryway for me in learning about the community and giving back to a place that I now call home and love. So thank you.
Are you exposing your vote? Thank you very much.
Thank
Let's see, Joel Sullivan, Territori, okay, very good. Question for Ms. Oh. Sir, you are? Michael Ramsey. Why don't you come on up?
Mayor, we had two, I think Joanna Kaufman and Mr. Ramsey, who were rescheduled for today but not slotted in a time.
Right,
so-
very good. So this is perfect. Why don't you go ahead, Mr. Ramsey? This is for Park and Recreation and downtown parking both?
Yes, sir. Thank
All right.
you, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. I've met a few of you before. I'm Michael Ramsey. Thanks for having me back. I'm here today to be considered for the Parks and Recreations Committee, as well as the Downtown Parking Commission to follow in the footsteps of Mayor Rouse. As I am committed to serving the Santa Barbara community in any capacity that benefits our wonderful city. With a background in business and marketing, I bring skills of budgeting, contract negotiations, and most importantly, strategic planning, all aligned with the Commission's goals of fostering vibrant, accessible public spaces. I'm particularly passionate about ensuring these spaces are accessible and enjoyable for everyone, whether it's young families, seniors, individuals with disabilities, and underserved communities which may have limited access to these resources. Thank you for your time and consideration. I look forward to serving Santa Barbara and contribute meaningfully to its future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Friedman?
I actually have a question maybe for the clerk. I don't see his name on for Parks and Recreation on the list that we have,
Or downtown parking?
or downtown parking.
I was a late addition.
So I can help with that. He applied for, he submitted an application, applied for another board or commission, and that one's pretty impacted, and I actually encouraged him to come back and offer to fill a spot on other ones that clearly were not going to make their numbers. And we've allowed people to do that before as long as they mention it. He just happened to make it in for his interview before he realized there were other opportunities.
This is your fault, then.
It's my fault.
So he is eligible for the Parks and Rec or
Right.
downtown parking.
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to double check.
And thank you. We
Thank you.
appreciate you jumping in for that.
Of course,
Oh,
happy.
Mr. Jordan has a question.
So, Mr. Ramsey, do you have a preference for either one of those?
Parks and Rec
Okay.
would be number one.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So, Ms. Connect, we are a little ahead of schedule. Well, there's actually somebody due now, but they're not here.
And Mayor, I wanted to let you know, I've asked the city staff from the last item to come back at 4, so they'll be back for the.
Okay, I was just wondering if we could have our public speakers speak at this time, if that would be out of protocol. If they like.
Mr. Mayor, so you would have the public speakers prior to the
Well,
remainder
we
of
have
the
two
council
more
questions?
council questions to be asked. I didn't know, just because they're here and they've been sitting, got delayed, is that?
It depends, I would want staff to be here for the
Okay.
public speakers.
All right, so
I think that would be a good idea.
we'll.
I-
You guys
I-
listening
they're
in
probably
on
here,
us?
Right, yeah.
Okay. So what I'd like to do while we wait for the other applicants, we just have a few more, is to go ahead, Mr. Friedman and Mr. Gutierrez both had questions of staff, and then we'll have the public speakers speak. But let's be mindful that we do have still applicants coming in, so not get too carried away. And I forget which one he was first, Mr. Gutierrez. Go right ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I appreciate staff's report and going over all the improvements they've done throughout the city, but in particular with my district. And I see that there was improvements done to San Pasqual, Chino, and Pedregosa. But what's the explanation for why it's taken so long for San Andres to be addressed for more pedestrian safety implementation?
Councilmember Oscar Gutierrez, through the mayor, Along San Andres, again, that was all part of, documented in the West Side and Lower West neighborhood and active transportation plan. And then we had to seek funding. We applied for multiple funding sources, one of the largest one being from the active transportation program grant that had all the intersection improvements along San Andres. We also doubled down on some other grant sources, so we actually were able to fast track. So whereas most of the improvements for that ATP project will be constructed in 2027, in early 2025, you'll start to see the pedestrian enhancements coming in on San Andres, specifically at Anapamu, Victoria, and Sola, and then hopefully closely followed behind is Arriaga as well. So again, critical destinations right adjacent to the Westside Boys and Girls Club, Bonnet Park, and of course the commercial core.
And so the residents have been asking me to have every intersection along San Andres have crosswalk lines painted. Would that be possible to implement?
Yes, that's all part of the project. So typically what we do is we install all the curb extensions, get all the lighting in, and then at the end we coordinate with the pavement maintenance to put all the new coat of asphalt, and then we'll put in the high visibility crossings. So that's what residents will expect to see along that corridor.
And we're just waiting for winter to pass.
Where the construction contract, it was with a multitude of projects, and we're just waiting. Right now, it's just waiting for the contractor to be mobilized, working on certain other sections right now in the city, with, again, hopefully it coming in early 2025. But that's already been awarded, so just waiting on the calendar. As soon as we know information, we send out just part of our standard process during construction to give people a heads up that it's coming soon.
Thank you. My next question is a follow-up to our first responders at the fire department and PD. The incident that happened on Pedregosa and Victoria, the residents that live in the area were very upset that they witnessed a fire truck getting stuck on the bike protected intersection. Could you comment on that? Is that accurate?
Mayor Rouse, Councilmember Gutierrez, I can't speak to that specific incident, but I know for a fact that the bike lane infrastructure on Gillespie and Valerio.
Sorry, it was Gillespie and Valerio.
Yeah, we took, as soon as it was done with construction, we took Engine 5 out there and laid down on the concrete and inched the engine toward it, and it would not fit over it. So the engines cannot drive through those. Hence my comment earlier of here's the pile of response options we have. That one's now off. So we have to remember that that is a permanent infrastructure that we can't get over. So that's could delay a response time. But the fact is we have to find another route because of that.
Okay, and so as a follow-up to staff, why are these installations so aggressive that first responders can't get through? Why can't they be a little less problematic?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Oscar Gutierrez, specific to the Gillespie-Valerio intersection, sorry, this is the first time hearing of this, but when it was designed, we took measurements under the fire trucks, we measured wheelbase and everything, so the idea when all this was formed and built is that a fire truck could pass over, but discourage day-to-day passenger vehicles from using that area. Hearing we should revisit that just to make sure that it is passable, but that wasn't the intent with the original design. There was a lot of measurements and care that went into the original design to make sure that it would function to accommodate our first responders.
Can we implement that citywide? Because I'm worried now that it's not just that specific intersection, it might be several others.
We'll speak to the fire department and see if there's any other locations that need to be revisited.
All right, thank you very much.
Mr. Friedman.
Thank you. Just a couple questions. One of the projects on there, it lists, it's Cabrillo and State, so the base, and they said it's a roundabout. Is that still on the books to try to turn that into a roundabout? Because it said it was partially complete, but they didn't, on other things that we've done there. So I was just wondering, because that would dramatically change that part of
Councilmember Freeman, through the mayor, it was mentioned in the pedestrian master plan. There isn't anything in the immediate future to look at that. Maybe again, as we go over the collision data and just overall circulation, it might come back on the table. But right now it's going to stay as a signalized intersection. A lot of the improvements are a recent focus, and that was a city project, was just to look at the overall circulation coming off the pier and having some safety related circulation for pedestrians and cyclists and that. And so that's been completed.
Okay, so that's not on the book. So the other question I had, it gets back to a lot of the questions you answered, but it's the Upper State Street area. So will the planning grant with the Safe Streets for All, when we're looking at this city as a whole, is that going to allow us more opportunities to look at creative solutions to what is going on Upper State? And the reason it's important is that part of town is going to get thousands of people probably living there, because we're going to have hundreds and hundreds of units within the next 10 years there, just from the Macy's project alone, plus some of the others. So you're talking a couple thousand more people living in that area, essentially from Las Positas north or even Hitchcock. And as it's stated, there's no easy way around it. And if all the plan is just as development comes in and redevelopment and we put the property owners on the hook, it doesn't seem like it's forward thinking. It's just reactive to me in terms of a situation we know is going to get worse. So will this enable us to look at more creative solutions? And what is the plan for up there other than being reactive to development?
There is, as part of the Upper State Street guidelines that are posted on our city website there, and I'm sorry I don't have that exhibit here to show, but it did show sort of a bypass to State Street with some of the parallel networks. But there are certain sections of that bypass that don't really exist or that wouldn't require some property acquisition. So I do hope as part of this study effort, we dive a little bit more into that. As part of our capital improvement program that's in this city, you'll see it again on this time around, is to look for improvements on Calle Real, which could be a potential bypass. It really depends on where your destinations are, but say you live in Upper State Street and you want to come to downtown, is to look at a multi-use path along Calle Real between La Cumbra and Las Positas. And with the West Side Lower West project, we're building a multi-use path between essentially Oak Park and Las Positas, so it'd be a tie-in. And then once you go through that, then you're right, essentially start to begin part of our grid network. So that could work really well. I think we probably want to examine that a little bit more further in this planning effort. But that's, again, part of our community outreach too, is to hear from families and residents if there's anything that we're missing. I think, I'd like to thank a lot of our predecessors for the previous plans and planning network as always being forward-thinking, and we hope to continue with that.
Perfect. So we would be looking at Calle Real and try to make improvements, especially if you're having a lot of units in La Cumbre Plaza.
Right.
And say they're trying to get down to, say, the west side or even to Las Positas to get to the beach. Instead of taking State Street, they could go down there. And then the last question I have, it's same issue, is throughout the city, we have, in order to reduce speeds and make it more pedestrian and bike friendly, we've either narrowed roads from 2 lanes to 1 or traffic calming. But in that area, are there plans to do any of that, since it is different than most other places in the city because of the congestion, the traffic? I'm just worried that if we start implementing some of these infrastructure solutions, that it would narrow the road, and we're still going to have the cars that are there, especially with all the units coming online. So are we trying to balance some of these other solutions that we've used in others with the unique circumstance of there's no bypass around State Street up there?
Councilmember Friedman, through the mayor, I guess the short answer is yes, it's always a balance. If you don't like traffic congestion, then you'll want to support active transportation projects, because now we're giving, even though that you might always be traveling in a vehicle, it gives other residents choices other than always having to be forced to drive. So having attractive and safe pedestrian and bike facilities helps relieve traffic congestion. But that's all part of the dialogue and community process as we look at network changes, is to have that conversation again. And a visual narrowing of roadways does happen with speed. Speed kills. So we do ideally want roadways that to help that limit speeds, that limits traffic collisions, at least the severity of them.
Thanks. And I'll just say, if there are discussions that go on about changing the nature of the roads, that the community up there needs to have well-informed community meetings. And I support what you're saying in terms of you want to have alternative spaces for bikes and pedestrians. But the reality is, in that part of town, there's always it's some of the most congested, and it's going to get more congested. It's just a reality. And if we over-design it, we could actually make the traffic worse, which then has impacts to pedestrians and bikes as well, because drivers will get frustrated. So that's what I'm hearing up there. That's the part of town I live in. So I just want to make sure if there's any changes into how we're designing it, that there's a lot of public input on that, because especially with all those new units coming online, it's going to be a new reality up there within the next 10 years. So thanks.
Yes. And any of these, yes to public conversations, and yes, anytime we've had roadway striping changes, we've always gone before council for the review in detail of those.
Okay, very good. Let's go ahead and go to public comment on this item. Go start out with Tony Becerra. And thank you guys both for being patient with this. And Madam Clerk, anybody online for this?
Mayor, council members, I just wanted to be here just to represent the west side a little bit more, the business district, first of all. With the islands that they did with the bike path, for example, Kuka's on Mitchell Terrena, you can't turn left to a business that typically is serving the west side. So that means if they're coming from the west, this would be south, basically going north on Mitchell Terrena, they can't make a left into Kuka's. So then the route is to go over the Mitchell Terrena Bridge safely, turn right on Castillo, then come around on Sola if it's allowed to go through, and then back up Castillo Street and circle around. So maybe adding a mile to the route time. So that's a big problem for not only the owner, who's seeing a decline in business, but also for the residents on Dutton Avenue, who now, which was a low-trafficked alleyway, basically, is now become the main thoroughway, because now the kids who used to play in the apartments and out in that street area no longer can do that, because now it's the main corridor for traffic coming from Arriaga Street. So just some things to be concerned about as far as the traffic goes, and the safety of our community. As far as the island that's on Valerio And Gillespie, I was told, the residents like it, slows down the traffic on Gillespie, but everybody on Chino and San Andres see a huge increase in traffic on their blocks, and also safety issues when it comes to the amount of traffic that is in crossing those streets. And I know that the crosswalks are coming, apparently, but the thing is way overdue, because these people are dealing with these problems today, not in 3 years. The other aspect of that is on the island itself, they have the big pylons. So I was told by the fire department that they actually have to lift the pylon, kick it out of the way, 2 of them, one on the north side, one on the south side, in order for them to cross through. So if that that right there slows down response time, which we know every second counts. But for a regular individual, that's 3 turns they have to do. That's 1 block to your left, block to your right, another block to the right to get to the destination you wanted to get to. So we find ourselves in a dilemma, and I think we need to look at that a little bit more. Just real quick, because I know my time's coming to an end, but there was an article written recently by the LA is called the Daily News, and it says Southern California's road changes aren't delivering on the promises in improved safety. And you see an increase in vehicle pedestrian deaths with these changes they're made, because like Councilman Friedman was talking about, where the congestion becomes so tight, the elevations aren't correct. And so what happens is, in this case, this study in Los Angeles had actually doubled the death amount. So we just need to look at, before we start making these huge changes and having these meetings, we need to make sure that we consider all aspects with public safety first before we make these big decisions with millions of dollars on stake in a city that is struggling with the budget. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Barry Remis.
Good afternoon, Mayor Rouse and council members. I'm Barry Remis with Move Santa Barbara County, and we advocate, we empower, we educate and advocate for those walking, biking, and taking public transit. And we do encourage you to approve the appropriation of these funds for the Safe Streets for All grant. This continues the conversation. It'll allow the city to be able to make future forward strides, to be able to get those rank numbers from 1 and 3 down or up higher, so that we can really show that the city is much safer. Again, it's not great to be able to see that we rank the highest in bicycle fatalities and collisions or pedestrians among other similar sized cities. Both Coast and the Santa Barbara Bicycle Coalition, the precursors to Move Santa Barbara County, were big advocates and supporters of the Vision Zero movement, and we were really pleased that the city adopted Vision Zero. We're equally pleased that the city of Goleta just this year adopted Vision Zero as well, and so we hope that there can be synergies there. And along the lines of Vision Zero, while it's well known among the city circles, we don't believe that the community at large really fully grasps or understands what Vision Zero is quite yet. And so we're really encouraged to see that and hope that a greater outreach and public relations messaging will go out, and we're happy to continue our work with the city transportation team to be able to help get that messaging out and education both into schools and also to the greater public about what Vision Zero means and what it can mean for the safety of our future city. And also the tie-in with the future development of the city in terms of State Street, et cetera. One of the things that, and so we really do encourage that support along those lines. And we're also happy to be able to partner with the city to be able to help with that outreach in terms of the future of this Safe Streets for All grant. Moving forward, speaking of the library plaza that's been brought up before, one of the things that Move Santa Barbara does in a separate note with our team of volunteers is we provide complimentary bike valet at a lot of different events. We're there for every show at the Bowl, and we're pleased to say that both this coming Sunday we'll be doing that as at the Santa Barbara Half Marathon and at the Plaza Palooza event. So we want to, of course, in the vein of active transportation, encourage everybody to walk or roll, and if you do, we'll be happy to park and watch your bike for free at the plaza. So we'll hope to see you there. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll bring it back to council. Let's please be mindful of the fact we still have a few applicants to go, but time for comments. So start out with Mr. Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, staff, for the in-depth report. It's just come to my attention that there's a growing number of residents that feel that the infrastructure that have been built so far, in particular in the west side, has proven to be more aggressive than what they originally imagined it was going to be. So now they're voicing their frustration and concerns to me, in particular the incident where the fire engine got stuck. And, you know, public safety being the number one priority for us, I had to take that really seriously because there was a fire on Pedregosa of a house. And, you know, hopefully that doesn't happen again, but it's making me worried about how our firefighters are going to be able to respond to something like that again with all these obstacles, so to speak, in the way. So as you know, I'm an avid biker, bike supporter, bike advocate. I want to see these bike infrastructure projects throughout the city, but I don't want them to be so aggressive that they get in the way of our first responders. And as of right now, as I said, I want the staff to communicate better with the fire department and police department about what's happening with these new infrastructure projects. Test them out. You know, I was there with some of my council members on State Street when the fire department went down to make sure to see if they could clear the obstacles on State Street, and just do that throughout the city and test out all these intersections, because it doesn't sound like that's happening or that happened, and it's pretty serious. So I want to make sure that moving forward, that the future infrastructure that's going to be built isn't as aggressive as it is now. And yeah, other than that, thank you for the hard work.
Ms. Gutierrez.
I will echo Councilmember Oscar Gutierrez's comments. The questions I asked at the beginning, I think it confirmed with the questions that Councilmember Oscar Gutierrez asked about just the axes. And at least in my district, the perception out there is that the city cares more about bicyclists than the actually people that live in that district and their needs. And that's why I asked the questions that I asked. And I am on city staff team, and this is why I asked these certain questions, and I know we both have very difficult jobs, but I would actually like to see this conversation come back to council and have a deeper look into these islands. Because in District 1, you know, I've had a couple community members, not just a couple, a lot, that they have asked for the city to have speed bumps in front of Adelante and Franklin, but and that has been a challenge. And so when the bike path on Alisos came, we not only did that bike path have speed bumps, but they also got the 4 stops and the islands. And so that really broke the hearts of a lot of the people in that district, because they are trying to understand the city process. And if we look at the chamber today, this conversation is really important for people in District 1 and District 3. I am not saying that you guys are not doing a good job. You are. It's an amazing plan what you have, but for specific districts, it's very impactful for their daily lives. And I think we wouldn't be doing our job duties as public servants if we don't bring this back to council. And again, for me, public safety is a priority. Every second counts when you're in an emergency. And to hear city staff that they haven't heard about the incident that happened in a sector in the city, I really want city staff to communicate between departments. It's really, really important, because it doesn't look good in the public if Public Works is not communicating with fire or police. And so we can start working together and just doing a better outreach. And I know outreach is a struggle, but maybe we start putting out communications in Spanish and in English. Radio station is really, it's very accessible for the Spanish speakers, especially because they're out there working. So if I would like to put a motion on the table to bring back the conversation about the bike islands and have city staff analyze it further with law enforcement and fire, if that's possible.
Yeah, thank you. I do see a couple of the applicants have showed up. We're just finishing an item we went a little bit long on, so please be patient, and we'll be within just a very few minutes. Mr. Friedman.
Thank you. I'll make my comments as brief as I can, but I just wanted a clarification based on what Councilmember Alejandro Gutierrez just said. So today's item, there's a time sensitivity to appropriate the funds to get the grant to do the planning, correct?
That's correct. We have 2 years to, complete the effort.
But to even get that grant, we have to approve these funds. If we don't approve this today, we couldn't even get the grant.
We would have to return the funding.
Yeah, we have to direct it today, or we wouldn't even. That's a separate.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I think, Councilmember Friedman, I just want to, I think if what I'm understanding, Councilmember Alejandro Gutierrez's request is that the grant agreement, that the council authorize execution of the grant agreement, but add an amendment to the motion to bring back a discussion of sort of community engagement in the neighborhoods and a plan, and also sorry. I was going to sneeze, discussion of the impacts of the traffic circles on public safety. So just as part of another conversation, but we could, I think that was your intention.
You can do it in one motion then. It wasn't
do-
something we had to separate. Okay, that's all I wanted to be clear, that we could do both, and I'm fine with that. I think it's important. First, I'll just say I'm supportive of moving this forward. It allows us to do a lot of the planning that we need to do for a lot of safety issues. Those numbers are way too high on a lot of them. And it would be an opportunity to bring it down. But there's a lot of questions, concerns raised by my colleagues, as well as what's going on in Upper State with what's pending up there in terms of the next 5 to 10 years, that this will allow us to get ahead of it. There's been public safety issues raised with some of the current infrastructure, so it's important to have that discussion. But I do also want to recognize our staff, in particular, Mr. Bailey and your staff. If I recall, it was the first Vision Zero project was the Las Positas in Macaw. And I just want to raise this because this is the value of the Vision Zero program, is that one of the highest accident intersections in the city was at Macaw and Las Positas. And there was some near fatalities, but there was a really high collision. And our staff, led by Mr. Bailey, went out and gathered some data, looked at the solutions, and they found that just by simply restriping the section from Macaw up to Adams School to make it one lane going towards Adams School for just that stretch, creating an auxiliary lane rather than a traffic lane, that we were able to address the issue. And then it created a turn lane going towards State Street from the freeway. And just by that simple restriping, not new engineering, it almost eliminated one of the highest traffic accident collisions intersections in our city. And the benefits up there have been immense. And the numbers we saw today would be higher if our staff hadn't done that. It's guaranteed that those would have been higher. So these programs have a lot of value, and that has really improved safety and traffic flow on the northern part of town. So I just wanted to raise that because that there is a lot of value in these programs as well. So I'll be willing to support the motion when the time comes, so we can make sure we get the wording right for Member Alejandro Gutierrez's request.
Mr. Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll also support A and B enthusiastically. Those simple fixes that sometimes you don't even know about, they were fixed until you go, oh. They weren't just the one that Eric was explaining to. You've done that on some of De La Vina. You did that on Cliff Drive. You've done that on Chapala, although the ones I usually really see that are really dangerous around town are all the downhill runs, the long downhill De La Vina, which you're still working on, or you just tend to get up speed, and those pose just an incredible hazard for everybody that's not in a car. Whether you're biking on the street, walking next to the street, trying to get across the street in a car, trying to get across the street walking. And, you guys kind of take the same abuse we take on those improvements, and I just want to enthusiastically tell you I support this stuff, and we'll have your back on that, and just keep up the good work on it, because being first is worst on any one of these categories is a horrible thing to be. So then I just have a couple constructive comments, as always. So I think you've heard a couple at least of some type of discussion on better outreach and communication. And I continue to say that, this particular area, this particular department, this kind of engineered department is one of the poster childs I have for trying to figure out a way that gets out of engineering speak and media releases and into engagement that people will gravitate toward and will actually understand what you're talking about. So I don't have the answer. It's not my strong point to have the answer. I just know it's a continuing thing. I know you make the effort on media releases. I know sometimes it pops up on Facebook. Sometimes it pops up on Nextdoor. I can control neither of how and when those pop up. So I don't know what the answer is to accomplish that, but I know it is also a continuing thing that I hear about, whether it's projects, paving, what the project looks like, whatever it is, just it surprises people, and they don't like surprises, regardless of what we're doing. Another observance I have is that in the scheme of things for your efforts, the story that you're not telling, the untold story, is all the near misses and close calls that aren't reflected in any of the statistics. And these happen every day. All of us that drive around, walk around, bike around, see these happen every day. To the extent that you're trying to tell a story with statistics, but you don't really have all the evidence at your hands to tell the story. And I think somewhere you need to bridge that disconnect on, okay, we're first is worse in one of those categories, and we're 15th in another, but the amount of occurrences really far exceeds what you're writing down on paper because there was a report made or an actual collision and a police officer was called and it became a report. And that needs to be reflected in all of our talking points, yours and mine. These projects, I mean, what's the date on the pedestrian master plan? 2006? So I know you've heard this before, and it's only going to get worse, but because of our reliance on leveraging funds with match funds, these projects certainly tend to eclipse multiple councils. And then, so something that was talked about 8 years ago then becomes this, I can't turn down a street and get out at the other end of the street, and what the hell is that thing, right? Whatever we're calling them, diversions or something, and nobody knows sitting up here or in even one prior council what are those things? Where'd they come from? You have an attachment in there, attachment 2, that talks about the 2016 master plan with milestones and stuff. I think the messaging on there could be much better about clearly there's still a road diet coming. There are diversions coming in those paragraphs to alert us and help you when those projects actually come to fruition, but they were approved 10 years ago. I couldn't tell you what some of those are reading the paragraphs you have there. And I think you want me on your side when that happens and that project actually goes on the street and the neighbors who are there weren't there when you had the outreach done a decade ago, right? So that'd be another comment. And I think I had one other, maybe not. Let's move on. Thank you.
All right, very good. Well, as quickly as I can, yes, I'll be supporting the grant application. One thing I find kind of frustrating, though, is the depiction as we go through the stats. I don't doubt the stats, but it's always very, car versus bike centric, as if the bikes have no responsibility. And I saw nowhere in this plan for Vision Zero, the grant, education. And we talked about that a lot, especially about e-bikes and whatnot. And I just thought about yesterday as I was driving into town, some guy blew right through the end of the barricades at Haley, and then right in front of me, I had to hit the brakes. He turned around. He must be a Dodgers fan. He showed me he was number 1, however that signal went. But And I thought, it could have been another statistic, and the statistic would show up that it was the car hit a bike. And the thing is, the fact of the matter is, Vision Zero, and I used to live and work in that country that where it came from, is about pedestrian and bike responsibility as well. People follow the rules, people don't cross on the yellow, people do a lot of things. There has to be that second set of responsibilities, because being completely car-centric is a false flag. It's not exactly all that happens. The conversations we're having about a lot of the infrastructures, and you know, Jessica, because you were here back then, when we had we don't use the word we don't use the B word anymore, bulb out, we call them curb extensions. But at one time, the entire street of Chapala was supposed to have a bunch of median hard infrastructure and whatnot. And we finally, because of Station 1, decided that wasn't a very good idea. I think a lot of stuff has gone forward that I certainly didn't anticipate when I left council, because it was going to be striping that turned into hard infrastructure, tended one-way streets. It is what it is, but there's a lot of neighbors, and I think Ms. Gutierrez and the Gutierrezes have both explained it. Those neighborhoods are not exactly thrilled, and I've gotten a lot of it myself. So I think we have to do, and I think Ms. Gutierrez brought it up about getting together on these plans first. Let's get the funding, get that squared away. I get that. But let's also make Vision Zero a piece of education on how you ride, how you cross streets, and how you walk. Everybody that wears a public safety uniform, I know, is frustrated with how pedestrians and bike riders act, because they're driving big pieces of equipment, and they're getting a lot of really devil-may-care attitude out there on the street that helps cause these statistics to be what they are. You can't engineer that stuff away. We also have to remember that we're trying to build for demand. We're not trying to create demand. And there's a lot of times these projects are trying to, quote unquote, create the demand. And so I think there's a balance there. There's a philosophy there. We're probably not going to agree on a lot of this stuff. But I'm telling you right now that as we go forward, we're going to have these same discussions we had over a decade ago. And it wasn't pretty back then. It may not be coming to a pretty point right now. Let's do our improvements, but let's be mindful that there are more than one way to look at this and how we get around our neighborhoods. And let's always, always, always have public safety in first, please. That's just our number one. With that, I will entertain a motion. I think, Ms. Gutierrez, you were probably primed to make one. Am I correct? Would you please?
I would like to make a motion to approve the staff recommendation with adding furthermore of study discussion on the islands, or how do we call it? Yeah. With law enforcement and fire and community outreach, and then coming back to council to report on it.
Second.
Okay, first by Alejandro Gutierrez, second by Oscar Gutierrez. Does everybody understand the motion? Madam Clerk?
Yes, and to restate, so please let me know if there are changes. Motion by Councilmember Alejandro Gutierrez, seconded by Councilmember Oscar Gutierrez, to approve the staff recommendation and adding setting of discussion on items with law enforcement and fire and returning to council to discuss. Okay?
Everybody good?
All right.
Can we have the vote, please?
Go ahead and vote, please.
Thank you. Passed unanimously, all present, with Kristen Snedden absent. Okay, thank you, staff. Thank you, all applicants, for your patience and waiting. We'll get going here again. Start out with Craig Alexander, who's on for the Airport Commission.
Here.
Yes, please, go right ahead.
Thank you very much for letting me come forward here. I just want to thank all of you for all your hard work and service that you do. I've been in your position before in my past history. I've had a chance to discuss the position with the Airport Commission with a few of you, and I think you know where I stand on this. You have my resume, so I will do this in what they call the 1-minute elevator speech. My experience is Wall Street. I'm an expert. I consider myself an expert in interest rates, quantitative analysis, and finance. I've mentioned I've been in your position before. I did run for town council in New Jersey and won. And this was kind of a awkward time in New Jersey. It was an area, a time called Mount Laurel, where towns had to provide for homeless for indigenous. And this was a big political thing. I understand exactly where you are. And again, I just want to thank you for all your service. The airport. I've been involved with the airport for the last 3 years extensively. I have been working with Mr. Hazard since he arrived on numerous projects. I am a member of the Noise Abatement Committee, and I do want to bring something out on my participation on that committee. I consider that not only Santa Barbara, I also consider it Goleta. It's a big thing, and you know what? We all have to listen. We all have to pay attention and listen to what everyone has to say. So, and I can go on with that more. I am also the founder and president of something called the Santa Barbara Aviators. It's a group I've coordinated also over the last 3 years. We have over 300 members of commercial pilots, private pilots, the tower, and schools, flight clubs, everybody. So again, been very involved in that. It's been very, very successful. I've done this on the notion of being strategically focused on 3 words, and that's being, it's education, it's communication, and it's community. And that is what it's all about, and it works. So to end this, I just want to stipulate that, or just tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a team player. My goal is to get everybody in the airport community kind of happy, or more or less being able to play in the same sandbox. That's a big goal. I'm an organizer, and I'm a listener. So on that note, I just want to say thank you. I look forward to serving on the Airport Commission, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Alexander? Thank you very much for coming in and applying. Thank you. Eric Gonzalez, please, for Santa Barbara Youth Council.
Good evening. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. I'm here applying for the Santa Barbara Youth Council group. I'm a 17-year-old born and raised in Santa Barbara. I am an experienced leader in my community, and I'm currently serving as a student board member for the Santa Barbara Unified School District. I advocate for student voices from kindergarten through 12th grade for 18 different schools. I lead the Student Advisory Council meeting, a group of students that lead the meeting and that connect with high school students across the district to discuss ideas and initiatives that improve our school environments. I'm passionate about supporting our community by listening to the voices and ideas for the young people, creating a safe and welcoming environment where everyone feels mentally healthy and has a sense of belonging. I hope that the Youth Council will allow me to expand and impact my city and reach a larger community. Beyond these roles, I have actively contributed to our community by working with the Santa Barbara City parking, and helped with concerts in the park and volunteered at the March 5th primary election. I'm also the president of the Voters Education Club, where I educate my peers about civic engagement and highlighting the importance of voting. I'm excited for the opportunity to apply for the Santa Barbara Youth Council, and I believe that my experiences make me a strong candidate, and I want to help ensure that the youth voices are included in decisions that help shape our community and benefit the young people in Santa Barbara.
All right, thanks very much. Do we have any questions for Mr. Gonzalez?
I have a question.
Ms. Gutierrez?
What motivated you to take these leadership roles?
I grew up in Santa Barbara, so I've been around so many areas, and I have a younger sister and many younger cousins. So I want to set an example for them, and also want to ensure that they have a better experience that I had growing up in Santa Barbara, not only in a school level, but as a city level. And I've seen other students in my school that have been participating in the youth council. And I think it's a great way to expand on a city level and just give a voice for the youth in Santa Barbara. And I think I want to expand my connection, I guess you could say, to the city and just set an example. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Friedman?
Thank you. Thank you for stepping up and applying. It's impressive. I just wanted to clarify, you're the Santa Barbara Unified School District Board student rep?
Correct.
And how long have you been doing that?
The start of this school year, it was August. It was during summer. I've been involved with the district, but recently we held our first meeting. I'd say in August, yeah. And from there, I've been continuing to work with the district, be a part of those meetings, and hold the student advisory council meetings.
So you're involved with the school board and know how the meetings run and everything. And how do you? Just last question. It's pretty impressive. How do you feel that experience and that will help you as a member of the youth council and the board here?
I think with the position that I was lucky to get at the board level, the district level. Sorry, I think it encouraged me to step out of my comfort zone and really try and connect with the students to try and understand what their ideas and voices. Yeah, before that, I was kind of in my own bubble. I stepped out of my comfort zone. And I think it was a great way for me to connect with other students. But yeah, I think I have access and I'm able to connect to 18 different schools under the district, and see what's going on in the school communities and what's going on in the students' day-to-day life.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your answer.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, very good. Thank you. Joel Sullivan. This would be for the Airport Commission.
Hello. Thank you for the opportunity. Appreciate it. So if appointed, I feel I do have some time to provide to this position as I plan to retire from Raytheon Technology after over 20 years there. I do know the Airport Advisory Committee acts as a sounding board for the airport director in making decisions about planning and policy. I do feel qualified to serve. I'm a trained aeronautical engineer. I've got a master's of business administration. I began flying when I was in high school. After earning my college degree, I took a commission in the Navy and I flew off the USS Forrestal globally. In 2013, my wife and I, we purchased Above All Aviation. It is a flight school, scenic flight provider, aircraft charter, and maintenance provider. That's where I've provided flight instruction part-time since 2017. So I want you to know I've got a pretty broad perspective. On any given week, I'll fly a fixed-wing airplane out of the airport, for the school, and then I'll come back with a helicopter. We'll use the commercial side to travel regionally, or to rent a car and get down to LA with my work at Raytheon. We'll frequent all the vendors there, and so I've got a pretty broad perspective. I feel that I can, participate with that group on a wide variety of topics. I do have an interest in growing general aviation. From my perspective, the airport's role is to become financially self-sufficient by creating a venue where commercial operators can provide aeronautical services to the flying public. while minimizing any adverse impact to the environment. And so the future of general aviation here in Santa Barbara is one where general aviation pays for our share of the airport from which we operate. Okay? It requires investment, right, if we're going to have it here. If I could do one thing, I think, with this tenure, it would be to find a way to keep the parallel runway and still upgrade our terminal. I don't have the facts, you know, I don't have a solution, but boy, if we could do that, it would make a lot of people happy, and not just local folks, everyone who uses the airport, right? It's the equivalent, when you take away a runway, it's the equivalent of like maybe closing a lane on the 101, and then, you know, everything on the front of the streets backs up, right? Everyone gets stuck in that. So I appreciate your time, and thanks for your consideration.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Sullivan? Mr. Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You mentioned that you own a business
Correct.
at the airport?
Correct.
And so would you have to recuse yourself frequently when it comes to certain issues?
You know, I don't know the answer to that, but I do know the way it is now, there are no vendors, and so there's a lack of representation, right? It's been taxation without representation. This is an opportunity for you folks to all, you know, help remedy that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Terry Jory, please, and this is for Planning Commission.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Bend it down.
Good afternoon, Mayor Rouse and esteemed council members. I'm Dr. Terry Jory, and applying for the Planning Commission at this time when our city's at a crossroads for housing and the soul of State Street is at stake. Putting it simply, Santa Barbara is in a dilemma when people come to work every day taking care of you and me, be it police officers, teachers, healthcare workers, including doctors, and after a full day of work, don't have a home to go to in our city where they work and serve. As a consequence, these employees are not sticking around long term. Out of necessity to try and maintain their workers, Cottage Hospital is repurposing property to house their healthcare employees. Santa Barbara Unified is also being innovated by repurposing property to own in order to house their district staff with federal tax credits made possible by connecting builders with nonprofits. The city must also be innovative and responsive to its changing needs by ensuring adequate land is zoned to accommodate and facilitate housing and infill housing for our workers, especially in the downtown corridor. Otherwise, that neighborhood, State Street, will continue devolving into an even more barren corridor of empty storefronts. Not a neighborhood characteristic we want to preserve. Bottom line, Santa Barbara will thrive with having our workforce living here. After getting off work, workers will be spending their hard-earned cash back into the local economy, producing revenue for the city. It's a win for everybody. To make this win happen, in addition to increasing the supply of workforce housing downtown, incentivizing mixed-use development and redevelopment, the city must also remove regulatory barriers. I know about those barriers. It took us 7 years to build our Mesa home. The permitting process must be streamlined to incentivize builders and businesses in our downtown corridor, while simultaneously preserving and restoring the soul of State Street. My experience as a pragmatic and innovative community leader on the Mesa, owning a small business, a nonprofit organization, earning my PhD in public policy and statistics, and a law degree studying land use, puts me in a position to bring an innovative solutions approach of business acumen with empirical problem-solving techniques to the Planning Commission, making Santa Barbara a model city once again. I appreciate your time in considering me for the role of Planning Commissioner.
Thank you. Are there questions, Mr. Jury? Thank you so much for coming in. Joanna Kaufman. And this is for Parks and Rec, and, no, excuse me, this is for Citizens Oversight and the Neighborhood Advisory.
Yeah. Hello, my name is Joanna. And I've lived in Santa Barbara on and off for the past 2 decades. I came here from the Inland Empire where I grew up. My father commuted 2 hours each way every day from his job, and I think that heavily influenced why I studied planning. So my educational and professional background is in urban planning. And I want everyone to have a quality of life where they can not have to go through that. And I understand that's the reality for not just my father, but lots of other people. And so that's why I studied what I studied. And so I have extensive background in both public sector. I worked for City of San Luis Obispo, also briefly for the City of Santa Barbara. More recently, I spent the last 4 years, or not last 4 years, I spent 4 years at a local land use law firm, and now I work for a national research project that is evaluating zoning regulations as they pertain to housing. I've been really involved in the community for a while now. You've probably seen me here up at the dais, and so I realized now that I'm a parent, I'm looking for more meaningful ways to become involved and share my skill set, which is heavily analytical, with the decision-making process in some way. I selected both of these committees, both because I'm interested in fiscal responsibility and evaluating the impact dollar for dollar, and just also getting involved more on the ground within my immediate community, especially now that I'm a parent in the public school system. I find myself connecting with other parents that may not be, so aware of what's going on week to week locally here, especially at city council level. So I just like sharing that knowledge. Yeah, basically, I want to share my skill set in a more meaningful way, and just looking for more ways to become more deeply involved in the decision-making process. That's all I have to say.
All right, very good, thank you. Any questions for Ms. Kaufman? Thank you very much.
you.
Thanks for waiting. Appreciate it. All right, well, that is it for our interviews today. We'll go to council and staff communications or council member engagements. Anybody get engaged? Mr. Friedman.
Well, don't tell that to my wife that I was engaged. I forgot to mention earlier that I attended the Central Coast Water Authority monthly meeting. For community events, attended the Jody House annual event. It's another great organization here in town, making a safe space and for those with traumatic brain injuries and in getting them back on the path to recovery and self-sufficiency, and it's also for their families and friends. Attended the local government working group with the California Coastal Commission that I'm a part of. Also attended the Sea International 50th anniversary event, and congratulations to Sea International for 50 years of helping people see again throughout the world. I think they said there was over 700,000 surgeries they've done to restore sight to those around the world, and sometimes, a lot of times, this can be done for as little as $50 for the surgery, and it can give someone their sight back, which is incredible. It was a very moving event. And then also with my colleagues, Councilmember Oscar Gutierrez and Councilmember Sneddon and Assemblymember Hart, attended the Youth Climate Workshop hosted by the Community Environmental Council, and just were able to talk about climate change and what we can all do, and then our own personal paths to public policy and green goals. So it was a really great workshop, and thanks to the CEC for putting that on and inspiring the next generation of leadership within our youth.
Mr. Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I attended the Year of the Dragon celebration at the Presidio and got to celebrate the artist who did the mural there, and also got to attend the picnic at the cemetery and at the Santa Barbara Cemetery, which is, it's a really beautiful location for a cemetery that's overlooking the water and the beach. But it was very educational because they explained how before municipalities took over creating open spaces for their communities and their cities, people would regularly have picnics and hang out at the cemeteries because it was a big, open, well-kept space. So it was kind of cool for the Santa Barbara Cemetery to allow that as a traditional event. So it was cool that, in a weird way, that cemeteries are what kind of influence cities to have parks. So, yeah.
All right, very good. Well, on separate days, I had both Crane School and Anacapa School here in Chambers with some very well-spoken kids who asked very tough questions around elections, so won't be doing that again anytime soon. But, did the Jody House thing. We got to award I wish I could remember the name of the award now, but anyway, gave an award to that. That was a great event. We had an event in Santa Maria where Supervisor Hartman and I put on a food vendors hearing, and had a lot of very spirited food vendors from Santa Maria there that were, as you can imagine, rather excited about as we were about this. So I think we're all on the same page, and I had law enforcement, we had the health department and different kinds of code enforcement people there, so we're moving forward on that. And last but not least, we had the annual Mayor's Award Breakfast, where I got to give awards to businesses that hire disabled people, and it was and the one that won the main event was a daughter of an old friend of mine. So that was very, very cool. And with that, I don't think we have anything else, and we stand adjourned. We are not meeting next week. What's going on next week? Oh, yeah, an election thing. So we will see you guys on the other side of that.